Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to this morning's BCP Planning Committee. 2 seconds while I sort my own microphone out. So, my name's Councillor Kelsey, and it's my job to chair the meeting this morning. And the first thing I will do is introduce the committee members. And we have myself, Councillor Kelsey, Councillor Johnson, Vice Chairman, Councillor Steve Barron, Councillor Derek Borthwick, Councillor Simon Bull, Councillor Malcolm Davies, Councillor Peter Hall, Councillor Paul Hilliard, Councillor Bob Lawton, Councillor Marion Lepidovin, Councillor Tony O'Neill, Councillor Felicity Rice, Councillor Tony Trent, and I'd like to welcome Councillor Vanessa Ricketts to her first planning meeting as well. So we also have a selection of officers in the room. We have Mr. Fox, Interim Director of Planning. We have Alex Cruikshank, also one of the heads of planning. And we have Mr. Hodges. We also have several other planning officers, including Robert Firth, who is the Senior Solicitor. Now we'll move on to the agenda items for this meeting. And the first item is apologies. Do we have any apologies, please, Jill?
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just read out the housekeeping notice.
Yes, please.
So please note this meeting of the Planning Committee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chairman in case of disruption. For those in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point under the Bradeley Road flyover. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Please note this includes members' laptops. Please turn off laptop cameras and microphones and turn volume all the way down to ensure there is no feedback during the meeting. Thank you. Apologies have been received from Councillor George Farquhar and Councillor Simon McCormack.
And substitute members?
Substitute members, Councillor Vanessa Ricketts is substituting for Councillor McCormack today.
Thank you for that. Declarations of interest. Does any member on the board today have any declarations of interest for any of the items taking place today, please? None? Thank you very much, members. And do members agree to me signing the minutes from previous meetings? Agreed. Thank you very much. So after each officer's presentation, we will hear public speakers followed by any ward councillors and other councillors who wish to speak. And we will now move straight on to the schedule of planning applications. There are 4 reports listed for the agenda today, the first of which is 6A, which is Parr's Quality Confectionery at 26 Alder Road, Poole. And I would ask Laura Archer if you could present your case, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you, Laura.
You are seeing the presentation okay?
We are, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chairman. The site is Parr's Quality Confectionery, 26 Alder Road in Branksome Poole. The proposal before you is to erect a discount food store and coffee shop. The site has been vacant for some years but was last used as a sweet factory. The application has been brought before the committee today because it has some complex policy issues and proposes a departure from the local plan, being as the site is allocated for a care home and specialist accommodation. Also, there have been over 400 representations received in support of the application, but the application has been recommended for refusal. Members should be aware that since the late addendum, 2 more representations have been received.
Sorry,
One object. Yes,
sorry. Can I just stop you for a moment? We don't seem to be getting anything through. Are you still on your first page of your screen?
Yes.
So, Chairman, Laura, you need to share your presentation by sharing your window on the Teams call. Otherwise, it won't come through on the live stream. So we can see it in the meeting room, but we can't. It won't be on the website.
Apologies. This is. Sorry. How do you do that? My apologies. The window rather than the screen. I'm with you. Let's see. Is that better?
Yep, thank you very much.
Sorry, my apologies.
Not a problem.
Anyway, I was still on the first slide anyway, so you've not missed anything. Members should be aware that since the late addendum, 2 more representations have been received, one objecting and the other supporting, bringing us to a total number of 445 representations in support of the proposal and 17 objections. You'll note from the committee report this application was previously put forward to committee in September 22, and the committee resolved that planning permission be delegated to the head of planning for approval subject to conditions, which was contrary to the officer recommendation. A decision notice granting planning permission was issued in November 22, and members will note that a copy of that decision with the conditions attached are included as Appendix B. In December 22, a judicial review claim was served on the council, and as a result, the council's decision has been quashed by the High Court. Therefore, members are required to consider the application once again today with the considerations as set out in the original committee report, but in addition to consider those issues raised by the High Court claim, which are set out in the latest committee report. However, specifically, the need to provide reasons for approving the application, having regard to the history of the site, the case officer recommendation, and that it would be a departure from the local plan, and also any impact upon equalities. I have moved to the next slide now. Hopefully that should be showing. For information, I've captured some of the matters which were raised by the members at the previous committee, both for and against. Notwithstanding the previous debate, the application now needs to be considered afresh today, and in that respect, members are not bound to follow their previous views, whether for or against, if they now consider that an alternative approach is justified. For consistency, I will run through my presentation today, which is as previously presented to the Planning Committee. However, I will also address those issues that were raised through the High Court claim. In terms of location and surrounding context, the site is located just off Branksome Roundabout, which is a fairly busy junction leading to Poole Road, Bournemouth Road, Ashley Road and Alder Road. You'll see from the site plans and the aerial photography, the site is adjacent to residential to the north and the west, and the site is adjacent to Poole Retail Park with retail units to the south and the east. The existing access to the site is on the residential side within Alder Road to the west elevation, that little triangle you can see at the bottom. The existing access can be seen here in the top photograph. The access and the site itself are fairly level. However, there is a significant drop in the gradient of Alder Road, and this together with the tree and shrub screening means that the site isn't largely evident within Alder Road. On the other side of the site, it's largely level with the retail park and is more open on the Redlands elevation, which can be seen in the bottom photograph. Old factory buildings have been demolished, so the site remains largely empty now. Turning to the proposal, 2 buildings would be erected, one for the food store and another smaller building for the coffee pod. Access is proposed on the east elevation from Redlands within the retail park. There are numerous trees and hedgings around the boundaries of the site. 4 category C low amenity trees are proposed to be removed, and 10 new trees would be provided as replacements. The food store building would be modern in appearance with a flat sloping roof and would have an internal floor space of just over 1,700 square metres. The coffee pod is a much smaller building, but would also be modern in appearance with a flat sloping roof, and both buildings are intended to meet BREEAM excellent standards. Here we have some sections showing levels and the height of the proposed buildings relative to the old factory buildings. You'll see the top picture is the old factory buildings, which have now been demolished, and the bottom one is the proposed buildings. And here we have some street scene elevations. The upper picture is viewed from Redlands, and you can see the context next to the large neighbouring home base building. The lower picture is from Alder Road. The home base building is now on the right hand side, and on the left shows the relationship to the neighbouring properties in Alder Road. In terms of relationship to these residential properties and those in Runton Road behind as well, the food store would be sited closer towards the southern boundary, which would be away from those properties, which helps to minimise impact upon their amenities. With the proposed access via Redlands and the retail park, the existing vehicular access to Alder Road would be closed to vehicular traffic but retained for pedestrians, and providing a route through the site and to the retail park. A new pedestrian crossing is proposed within Alder Road and Redlands, which represents a significant highway gain. The application proposes 112 car parking spaces. Proposal would increase vehicle movements around Branksome roundabout, and obviously it is already quite a congested junction. However, taking into account an allowance for passerby traffic trips, there is only likely to be a 1.7% increase on the roundabout during peak traffic on a weekday and 2.6% increase on a Saturday. This is a relatively small increase in the traffic on the network, and it would be difficult to argue a severe impact as a result of the proposal. Turning to the main policy issues posed by the proposal, the local plan allocates this site for a 70-bed care home and 30 specialist accommodation homes. This is as a result. It was allocated for this use because more care homes and specialist accommodation homes are needed to meet the needs of the ageing population in Poole. Long-term, 816 additional care or nursing home bed spaces and 3,425 additional specialist accommodation homes are required over the plan period. Unfortunately, since the start of the plan, we haven't been delivering enough care home bed spaces or specialist accommodations, so there is currently a shortfall in delivery. However, it is recognised that in the short term, there has been a dip in demand for care home bed spaces, which is mainly due to COVID. The applicant considers that site isn't suitable or attractive enough to develop as a care home and specialist accommodation homes. Some evidence has been submitted in this respect. However, for the reasons set out in the report, it isn't considered sufficient to justify a departure from the local plan, not least because the evidence isn't supported by full and proper up-to-date marketing as required by the policy. Indeed, no marketing has been carried out on the site since 2016. Significantly, this means no further marketing has taken place since the last application was considered and refused, and no marketing has been carried out since it was allocated. In addition, it should also be noted that if the council were willing to accept that the site is no longer suitable for a care home and specialist accommodation homes, it is still regarded as an isolated employment site, and in which case PP16 should be applied, and it would need to be demonstrated that the site is no longer suitable for continued employment use. Again, this would normally need to be demonstrated through full and proper up-to-date marketing, which is absent. Turning to the second planning issue, new retail should be directed towards town centres, district centres or local centres first. The site is regarded as being out of centre, i.e. it's not within any of these centres. It is close to Branksome Centre and the retail park, but it is not within the boundary of either. As such, national and local policy requires that the proposal undergo a sequential test and impact assessment. The sequential test has been satisfactorily passed. However, the impact assessment has highlighted some concerns. Branksome Local Centre and Wallisdown Centre would be impacted by the proposal because the catchment for the proposed food store overlaps with existing food stores in those centres. As a result, trade would be drawn away from those existing food stores and significantly away from the centres. Trade drawn from the Lidl in Branksome would be significant, as you can see, but it's unlikely to have an adverse effect upon the centre as a whole. However, the situation with the existing food store at the Wallisdown Centre is different because this existing food store acts as an anchor for trade within the centre. The loss of trade to the existing food store at Wallisdown would have a significant adverse impact upon the vitality and viability of the Wallisdown Centre. There's a likelihood that the existing food store at Wallisdown could close as a result of the proposal. You will see from the latest committee report that an equalities impact assessment has been undertaken and concludes that the proposal could impact positively and negatively upon those with protected characteristics. In this case, specifically the older population, those with disabilities and those with a lower socio-economic status. The negative impacts would need to be mitigated through developing more sites elsewhere for care homes and or specialist accommodation homes in order to meet the housing needs of the older and or disabled population, whilst retail function and investments would need to be supported in order to maintain vitality and viability in the Wallace Down Centre. To sum up, it is recognised that there are clearly some significant merits of the scheme, and there is also a lot of public support for the proposal. However, on balance, it is not thought that the benefits of the scheme would outweigh the harm identified in terms of the loss of a key strategic allocation for care home and specialist accommodation homes, as well as the impact upon the vitality and viability of the Wallace Down Centre. Therefore, the application is recommended for refusal today. However, should the committee move to approve, having regard to the history, the recommendation, and being a departure from the local plan, reasons for approving the application will need to be given. And in that eventuality, members will also need to consider appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. We have speakers today, please, John.
Thank you. There are no speakers registered in objection. Speaking in support, first is Barbara Bailiff, who is going to speak for approximately 2 minutes, followed by Mr. Alan Williams, who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant for approximately 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm here to represent the residents of Runton Road whose properties are closely adjacent to the site in question. We've all lived in our homes a long time, and we're very pleased when in September the committee were mindful to approve permission for the development of the site, which overlooks our homes. Residents have said that this site is not suitable for a care home due to the location and the traffic, and this is an ideal opportunity for something else for an unused area. As the site is surrounded predominantly by a retail park with limited food offer, the proposal for a medium-sized affordable supermarket and coffee shop to replace the derelict industrial site appears to us to be an appropriate alternative, as well as boosting employment opportunities. I understand also that many local residents do not use the store at Wallace Down, and the effect on this store would seem to be limited. The potential developers have been very considerate regarding the low-level positioning of the building, which suits a hilltop site, and have listened to our concerns, visited our properties to assess the impact, and thoroughly revised their plans accordingly. We, together with many of our neighbours, think that the proposed store would be an asset to the existing retail park, whilst being sympathetic to the existing homes surrounding the site. We recognise that the traffic in Branksome is a problem, as we live there, but as the retail site is flourishing, regardless of the stores who open there, it would seem that highways need to address these issues rather than restrict the opportunities that the site offers. We hope that the committee will recognise the opportunity that this application provides to secure an appropriate development which will improve the locality and end the uncertainty which has blighted the homes of those of us who live nearby for a long time. We're asking that the BCP Planning Committee make a positive and rapid decision following the overwhelmingly positive feedback from the public, so that the long wait which we have had, along with Aldi, can be resolved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes and 7 seconds, 3 minutes and 7 seconds.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Alan Williams from Planning Potential, the planning agent for Aldi with regards to this planning application. Here with me is Lee McCandless, Aldi's property director for this project. The planning application was previously granted planning permission by councillors, but a judicial review claim was made by a rival retailer. A consent order was subsequently issued quashing the permission, requiring the application to be formally redetermined to make sure the correct decision-making process is followed. Councillors are entitled to once again vote in support of this application in order to deliver its many benefits. This time, however, it is necessary to give reasons as to why permission is being granted. As well as building the UK's lowest cost supermarket on people's doorstep, Aldi is wanting to invest over £12 million in Branksome through this project. Communities are facing a cost of living crisis, A new Aldi here will not solve this, but will help alleviate it. Since the refusal of a store on the site in 2019, we have carefully considered the reasons for refusal and have liaised with officers for over 2 years with regards to this application and have continued to listen to the community. We've provided up-to-date retail impact analysis demonstrating the proposals will not have a significant adverse impact on centres, including Wallisdown Road Local Centre. Furthermore, there are plenty of examples where Aldi stores successfully trade in similar proximity, including stores at Holdenhurst Road and Palmerston Road in Bournemouth. We've also provided evidence by an independent expert on the prospects of a care home on the site, robustly demonstrating the site is not suitable for this purpose. Indeed, despite a previous planning permission for a care home on the site, the care home developer was not able to deliver the scheme and this permission lapsed some time ago. Aldi's plan to maximise a brownfield site and provide a deliverable alternative to the unsuitable allocation for a care home in the local plan. All other matters, including highways, have been successfully addressed and are accepted by officers. An equality impact assessment has also been undertaken by the Council, which demonstrates the proposal will have positive benefits and does not demonstrably show there will be negative impacts on individuals with protected characteristics. As well as creating over 40 jobs, the proposals will improve the retail offer in the area and provide a highly sustainable development, reduce the need to travel further afield and improve pedestrian connectivity in the area. This application represents an exciting new future for this disused and derelict site, a future that hundreds of residents you represent support. National and local policy allow you to approve applications in cases where the benefits of a proposal significantly outweigh any perceived conflicts with the development plan. We consider this is a clear case where the benefits are such that plan permission should be granted, and I urge you to support these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No ward councillors. There are no ward councillors here to speak today. So firstly, I will ask Laura if there's anything you'd like to come back on, please.
No, Chairman, that's fine.
Thank you very much. In that case, it's over to members who would like to kick off the debate on this one, please. Councillor Trent.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be speaking partly as a ward councillor, partly as a member of this committee. I did put in an email a week or so ago about this application because I felt that it was rather inappropriate that a committee that you put it on a sort of level with a trial in a court, that this committee was effectively found to have mishandled the previous trial. Yet it's a bit like having a sort of a court case whereby you have a retrial and you have the same jury. I think to me that's totally inappropriate, but we are where we are. I had reluctantly accepted that it was granted at the last meeting that it came before, and had sort of said, well, you know, let's see how it sort of shapes up. But I do remain concerned. I remain concerned about the effect on Wallisdown because I also represent Wallisdown, or a large part of Wallisdown, and I know that residents there have been worried about the future of the Aldi store there because it doesn't have decent car parking or other aspects that attract it. But as I say, I don't think I will support it, but at the same time, I think I may very well not oppose it either and leave it up to the committee to fully justify their decision last time. As I say, I don't think it should have come to this committee. I think it should have come to the maybe the second committee of the new council, which would have several people that hadn't been previously involved. But we are where we are. All of the concerns remain. The concerns about traffic, which actually have been made worse because there was a delegated decision within the regulations of the local plan and so on to allow, I think it was a Hobbycraft to replace a carpet right, and that in itself will generate extra traffic. So we are actually considering the increase in traffic without taking into account something else which has been approved. So I won't stand in the way of the committee if it wants to reaffirm its support for the application, but I will not support it myself. I will abstain on the decision. So it's up to the committee to decide and to come up with adequate reasons why it went against the local plan.
Thank you very much, Councillor Trent. I think I'm just going to come back on slightly on that and just remind you that we are still councillors until the end of May. And were this application to have come in the first week of the next term of councillors, would you have suggested then that we wait 4 years for the next lot before we determine it again? I don't think that would be the correct way to do things. We have a job to do. It's not the first time we've had an application come back to us where we've had to redecide on it. And I think we should be treating this with no different way to what we have done with previous ones.
No, Chair, my suggestion would be that, and if you recall my email, I suggested the second meeting of the new planning committee, there will be different members. They will be there with a fresh mandate. It will be looked at freshly. All this is doing is going back to the same people that made a decision.
But they wouldn't have a fresh mandate, Councillor Trent. They would be treating and using the same policies in 2 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time as what we are today. So I think we're quite capable on this panel of moving forward and making a decision on this one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, Councillor Hilliard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Questions, please, to the officer. The application was refused in November 2019, and the reasons for refusal are the same reasons as we see today about the loss of the site for a care home and also trade diversion from the Wallasdown area. The applicant in their speech said that there had been a lot of pre-app discussions and changes since then, but you mentioned about the viability assessment. Has there been anything since November 2019 about a care home assessment or discussion about it or marketing of the land which we can see an analysis? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Chairman, if you're happy for me to come in there, verify the applicant has submitted information about viability from one of the market leaders. What is the issue with the policy is that in addition to that viability, you are required to do marketing as well. You are required to market the site to see if there is any interest in developing that site, you know, for the care home and specialist housing, and that's mainly where the issue has come from. The viability information is helpful, but it only gives one view from one market operator. You know, so whilst we would take that into account, that, you know, only part of the job has been done, if you like. Does that clarify?
Yeah, that answers that part. And then the other part is about the need for a care home. So have you worked with like the adult social care team within the council or any other parties to know there is a significant demand? We're hearing it all the time. Thank you.
So the needs assessment is done to support the local plan at the start of the local plan. I have shown both in my committee report, in the original committee report, because we have had a new one done for the BCP area for the local plan to support that as well. It hasn't changed much in terms of what our projected need is. That is for the plan period over the next, you know, 15-20 years. So the issue that's changed at the moment is that although we haven't delivered enough, so year on year we would expect to deliver X amount of care home bed spaces and X amount of specialist housing to meet that need over the plan period. So we are behind in what we would normally deliver. However, due to other circumstances, mainly due to COVID, there has been a drop in care home demand on the ground now. So we are seeing more vacancies than we would normally expect. I have checked that over with our adult social services as well, to discuss with them. So, and it has shown that there is a drop. There has been a drop in demand of, say, around 5 to 10% in vacancies. And on the ground, we are seeing that some care homes are struggling. So I don't think there's any doubt about that side of things. And we're happy that in the short term, there is a drop in demand in care homes. So it's not so much of an issue. Not so much on the specialist housing though, and not forgetting that the care home is only one side of the policy. They're also required to deliver the specialist accommodation, and we're behind on our delivery of that as well. And there is still demand in the market, and I think even in the information that the applicant has submitted, they accept that there is still demand in the market for the specialist accommodation, even on the ground today.
Thank you, Laura. That explains it. Thank you.
Councillor Ricketts, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Question for the officer, please. Two questions, actually. You mentioned that there is evidence of the closure of the Wallisdown store. Is that actually evidenced, or is that just supposition at the moment? And the second question is with regard to the issues and options from the emerging local plan, whether this site was identified and if anything was drawn from that consultation, please.
Sure. With relation to the first part of your question, so we employed a specialist retail consultant to look at the information that was submitted by the applicants, and that expert retail consultant has looked at all of the information that Aldi submitted. In fact, we had, as you know, it took quite a while to come to committee, and in that time we went back and forth between the retail experts to quantify some figures and the catchments and what have you to get down to it. And the resultant of that is that the expert retail consultant that we have employed has highlighted these concerns, and as I concluded to you, that there would be some impact upon potentially the Lidl store in the Branksome Centre, and that amount of trade that I can show to you again if you want. Although they didn't feel that would probably affect the overall centre, but at the Wallisdown Centre it was slightly different because there aren't many food stores up that way, and the Aldi serves as what we would call an anchor store at the Wallisdown Centre, i.e. it pulls trade in, so they would do linked trips to both Aldi and the rest of the centre, which obviously helps with the vitality and viability. Can you just remind me what the second part of your question was? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. It's regarding issues and options consultation as part of the emerging local plan, and whether this site was identified as part of that, and if so, what was drawn from that consultation, if you're aware of that. I know it's planning policy, but whether it's emerging planning policy, but whether there was any changes that came out of that issues and options consultation.
We did not, in the issues and options, as far as I'm aware, we did not specify certain sites for care homes and specialist accommodation. So we would have looked at the site. We do review the sites that are currently allocated, but we haven't come to any view on this site as such. So obviously with this application and everything going on, then we're looking to review this site. But no, there was nothing put out in the issues and options as such about this site. I think Aldi may have made a representation, however, about the site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Lepedevin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've been involved with this site for, well, it seems like all the time I've been a councillor. Not quite, that's a bit of an exaggeration, because originally when I started, I was councillor for Branksome West, and the site was in my ward. It now isn't. It's now in Alderney and Bourne Valley. But nonetheless, I've got a close interest because I live quite close. And obviously, it's been an issue ongoing as ward councillor at the time. I have an awful lot of sympathy with the residents. I think it's an absolute disgrace that this site has been left derelict and open to antisocial behaviour for so long. Now that the buildings, the original factory buildings, have been demolished, I think the situation's improved a bit, but I cannot understand how we allowed the owners to get away with leaving this site open. And so I have every sympathy with the residents wanting something built on the site. But the question is whether another supermarket in this area is the right thing. There are plenty of different sorts of food outlets in the very close proximity, right from, if you do the hierarchy, from say M&S in Westbourne, Waitrose, there's a Tesco, there's Lidl, there's Home Bargains actually on the Redlands, which is very cheap in many respects for many items. And there's fresh food shops as well, little specialist butchers and bakers and things. So there is a wide variety of retail opportunity. I am struggling to see justification for yet another supermarket. And the other thing I'm struggling with is that it is quite clearly specified in the local plan, which is still well within date. It was approved in the end of 2018. So when these applications came in, it was still had well over a year's life in it. I understand that Aldi, at the time of the examination in public, pressed their case that the site shouldn't be earmarked for care or specialist housing, and the inspector did not see the validity of their case then. So I think that maybe answers a question in my mind as to why Aldi haven't appealed against the refusal. They possibly realised that they would lose an appeal. I don't know. I'm not at all happy that the recent case has gone against us for reasons that should have been obvious. We were always told, particularly when I was on Pool Planning Committee, that if you go against an officer recommendation, you've got to have very clear stated reasons that will hold up should it go to appeal. And clearly that wasn't done in this case. I wasn't at that committee, let me hasten to add. I was subbed by Councillor Mike Brooke. But I cannot understand how a major decision like this overturned an officer decision without valid reasons being stated. And I'm struggling in my own mind to find valid reasons for overturning the officer recommendation and the local plan. As I say, I've got sympathy with the residents who want something built on the site. I think that is clear, but I'm not clear that we should go against the local plan when there is, despite what the developer has said, there is a known need for the sort of accommodation that is supposed to be built there according to the local plan. And I'm struggling to find a valid reason for overturning both the local plan and the officer recommendation, but I shall listen to all arguments.
Thank you, Councillor Pittman. Councillor Lawton, please.
Can I ask the officer, how long has that site been empty?
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to answer that. Actually, so it closed, I think, around 2016, the actual factory, and the factory building sat derelict for quite a few years. And then I think it was about 2 years ago that the factory buildings were demolished due to some issues on the site. So 7 years.
So my simple maths, 10 years you say it's been empty. So we could be sitting here another 10 years because of the local plan and still be empty. I don't actually see many care homes queuing up to build on it. As the ex-portfolio holder for housing, it's not a site I've ever looked at to build housing on. So in 10 years' time, because of the local plan, which is being a straight neck to us in some ways on this particular site, we will end up with a derelict site which will still be there in another 10 years. So it could be 20 years that it's empty and becoming an eyesore for local residents when it could be made more useful. I should be supporting, I won't be supporting your recommendation.
Councillor Orton. Councillor O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, a number of comments really. I was going to ask about the site, and Councillor Orton has. There's been speculation and prevarication on this one since 2016. There's also speculation on the way it will affect Wallisdown, because that's unproven. And in fact, there are many ladies and gentlemen that shop with ladies in this room that will confirm that no one shop provides all needs. People shop around. And indeed, there's a local catchment area in Wallisdown that is very strong and uses the facilities in that immediate area. And anybody that travels the Alder Road regularly are unlikely to rush down to the retail park unless it's for a very distinct reason. I'd also observed that retailers, before they actually put down multi-million-pound schemes, do a lot of homework. It is a major investment and it impacts, but it needs to impact positively to have any benefit. I'd observed that the original decision to grant the application was right, and not least because other retailers appear to have objected. As stated before in the previous meeting, the area needs jobs and it needs a robust retail grocery competition, particularly in the current climate. This will be to the benefit of residents, and I believe this application will deliver that. The site in question has been derelict for many years and is in need of development to a useful usage. No more speculation and prevarication about a care home or other facilities. There's been no takers since 2016. It's a brownfield site. It was formerly Par's Confectionery. It was a problem site until it was levelled. It is, in my opinion, perfect for retail development, it being located on a busy retail park. I cannot think of anything more suited than a competitive retailer and a coffee shop. My own contact with the local community in Penn Hill, which I represent, would wholeheartedly agree that the application would be of benefit, and I have not received one objection to this proposal. In addition, this site was suggested several years ago, we now know 2016, for a care home. I cannot think of a site less suited to that sort of facility. Sitting between the Bournemouth Road, the Poole Road and the Alder Road, it will be Death Race 2000 reincarnated. It would be crazy. And that's why people haven't rushed forward to build those sort of facilities. I suppose in summary, in my opinion, the development is considerate and appropriate, and I will fully support this application. Therefore, I would like to move to a vote, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. And what would your vote be? Would your vote be to support the officer's recommendation or go against it?
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, is that a move to? Is that a motion? That
yeah, move to grant. Yeah. Councillor Hilliard.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a point of order because Councillor O'Neill has got a printed speech basically already prepared, so I don't think that is in keeping of a planning committee. Thank you.
May I answer that, Chairman?
Yes, please, Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, there are councillors in this room that go out and visit all the sites, take notes, do their homework, look at all the papers and make their own decisions. I don't think the fact that I've got notes, and some of them are actually written on my notes, makes a hair's of difference. I stand by my decision and I give it with integrity. So let's not play politics, let's play planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. You may make a complete. Thank you, Alex.
Obviously, the panel will be aware that the previous decision of this panel's application was challenged. So given the point of order that's been raised and the answer given, it might be in the committee's best interest if you'd like to confirm, Councillor, that you come to this decision-making forum with an open mind, notwithstanding any material you have in front of you.
I came to this planning committee, as I do every time, with an open mind, having read all the papers, listened to the debate thus far. I've not heard anything that changes that view. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really difficult one. As a ward councillor like Councillor Trent, it's very, very rare that you see an application come forward with this level of public support and public support that's this widespread. But I'm just going to run through a few of my thoughts here. I think that firstly, I think the officer has made the only decision and the only recommendation to us that she is able to. I think if you look at the officer's purview in this case, the only recommendation that an officer can give is to refuse, because it is a large departure from our policy, whatever we think of that policy. And large departures like that are not within an officer's purview, but we are here for exactly this reason, where we can weigh up the public benefit, the public feeling, and make a decision based in policy, but also having that extra knowledge of the local feeling and everything like that. And if we were a planning committee that were allowed to make decisions purely based on common sense, this would be a 5-minute debate and we would vote this through. I think that's, in my mind, that's the way it would go, because I can't understand how this was ever allocated as a care home. It's sat off, as Councillor O'Neill said, one of the busiest junctions in our conurbation. It's loud, it's noisy, it's right on the boundary of a retail park. It's the perfect place for a shop. It's not a perfect place for a care home and specialist accommodation. But now that it's there, at what point do we stop sitting here going, well, it's allocated for a care home, when nobody clearly wants to build a care home on the site? If we keep doing that, it will sit empty for years and years and years until the new local plan comes in, if that local plan takes away that allocation. So at the end of the day, in my opinion, this Aldi should be built. However, it won't be until we can fulfil the requirements of the policy and make this decision properly and in a way that can't be challenged. We've heard that, unfortunately, as far as the case officer is concerned, the applicant has not fulfilled some of the tests necessary to go against the policy in this way. It's clear to me that it'll be challenged again. Should we grant? It's really, really frustrating, because there's no question that this would be of massive public benefit to the local people. It would remove a problem site from being a problem site, and I think the speculation that it'll hurt Wallisdown, I don't think that's justified, because Wallisdown has a catchment area north of Wallisdown Road as well, and I think you'll find that a lot of people around there won't risk a car journey down Alder Road and risking the traffic there to shop at a shop when they've got one a few hundred yards down the road that they can walk to. And it's at this point I come up again, do I support the move that's on the table, which I desperately want to, but I'm not sure that we have the ability to justify that departure from the policy in terms of a decision made here. And I will lose sleep over that, because I think that the only thing that's going to happen is another few years of waiting and watching to see if anyone comes forward to build a care home. So I think I'll leave it there for now, Chair, because I don't know how to finish that particular speech.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. Well, I disagree with a few of the opinions that it's not a suitable site for alternative supported accommodation. As we've already heard, there is screening that means whatever is on the site is not that visible from Alder Road, which benefits whoever's going to be using the site. And it's right next to residential accommodation. So developers are perfectly capable of making any site into an appropriate use for whatever we need. And in this situation, it is clearly stated that we need supported accommodation or a care home. I'm concerned, I agree that something needs to be built on the site, and residents are keen for something to be made to use that site, but I do not agree that it has to be an Audi. I'm very concerned about the impacts on the Audi in the Wallisdown Centre. The comment earlier about the parking, I think, is particularly relevant. It looks as if the parking at the Wallisdown Audi is about 50 places, which is almost well, this one will have 2/3 more, or be 3 times bigger, almost. And you can imagine that that would have a big impact on how people decide where to shop, and the consequences of that. So I don't think it should be ignored, and we're being advised that it shouldn't be ignored. I'm not very happy with the plans itself. In terms of walking and cycling facilities, I do appreciate the extra access from Alder Road into the site. However, we saw from the image, the CGI image of the Audi site, there weren't even dropped curbs, and there was no continuous pavement, so there was no priority for pedestrians given to the new site, and it was a very old-fashioned design. We as a council have commitment to reduce our transportation carbon requirements, and so the idea of increasing transport car usage around and congestion around that site by 2.7%, when we're meant to be reducing it, I wonder what is a significant amount of traffic, when that is an increase in traffic, when over the next 7 years we should be having an overall decrease. So it's, my understanding is that, okay, it's a 2.7% increase from what we are currently expecting. However, we should be aiming for a 30-40% decrease over the years. So we're looking at a sort of, well, maybe if we're thinking 10% decrease over the next 2 years, plus this 2.7%, we're talking about 12.7% increase, as opposed to where we should be heading. And is that significant from a transport point of view? Thank you. I think that's all of the points I wanted to raise.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hall, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After listening to the debate, I think that the decision to grant our support, because it's important, they've got the support of the residents and they really would like it. And I think it'd be a big improvement to the area. So I'm very happy to support the recommendation to grant.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask who's behind the judicial review, please? Is that
Asda?
Right, okay. Well, to my mind, then, it's a rival supermarket paying some very clever people to clutch at straws, quite bluntly. And I looked through, and it said, where is it? No consideration was given how this would inhibit the site coming forward as a care home to benefit those with protected characteristics of age. Well, I don't think that I just don't think it's a suitable place for a care home whatsoever. And whoever, with respect to whoever was responsible for that part of the local plan, the previous borough pool, what were they thinking? In your twilight years, you deserve better than to be stuck on an industrial estate, Mr. Chairman. It just really isn't a suitable place for a care home at all. So I will be going against the officer's recommendation, and I'd like this application approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at this application, which is against the local plans we've heard, I can hear from the debate we've had and from the officer that we still need specialist accommodation. We will probably need more care home accommodation, although there's been a slight change because of COVID, but I imagine our numbers will get back up to the level they were previously. There is a threat to the anchor site at Wallisdown, which will threaten the viability of the other retailers there. It's out of centre, which is against local and national policy. And there is the traffic issues that Councillor Rice has adequately covered. The reason why people haven't come rushing forward with a care home is because, as we've heard, it's not been marketed. If, when the first application was refused in 2019, some marketing was done, we wouldn't be here now. You know, it would either have, marketing would have either found somebody who wanted to develop it as specialist accommodation or as a care home, or they wouldn't have done, and this application wouldn't have the obstacles that it has in front of it now. So it's a problem of their own making by not properly marketing the site, and we can't get away from that. I have total sympathy with the residents in that particular area who want the supermarket next to them. But then I'm thinking if we lose the Wallace Down site there, the retailers there, not just the supermarket, but the other retailers, then where are we left? How are we helping the residents across the piece, if you like? And I can hear the arguments that a supermarket in my area was built close to another one, and they're both doing fine. Fine in that area. That might be the exception that proves the rule. I don't know. I'm not a marketeer in that way. I wouldn't know. So it does concern me very greatly, this application, and it concerns me to go against the officer's decision, recommendation. So I think I'll leave it there, but that's where I'm at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Will. Councillor Ricketts, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a real quandary, isn't it? We've got 445 residents in support of this application, and it can be argued, what are we here for if not to help and support our residents? But then we've got the local plan. You know, you look at the site, and we've got a retail unit being proposed to go in an industrial area next to a retail unit. So it's almost like, well, what's the problem? There's, you know, I think it'd be quite nice, you know, you go there, you can do a bit of shopping, go and have your coffee, pop over to Next, you know, it all seems like it fits quite nicely, and the residents are happy with this. But then we've got this problem with the local plan and obviously the traffic implications. My problem is I really would like to support this application. I think it would be of benefit to the area. But the problem is that at the moment I can't support this motion because I can see that there are no reasons in planning where we can actually, unless somebody can come up with something that is clear and defined as a good reason, we're going to be back here next year after another judicial review. And as Councillor Lawton said, it's just going to be a delay on this site again and again and again because it's going to be challenged. So unless the original proposer can come up with reasons in planning why we approve this, at the moment, I can't go along with that motion because I think it needs to be evidenced with support. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Ricketts. Councillor Trent.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd come back because we really need to clarify some of the history here. I think Councillor Podovin made reference to the state of the area, and I think in the last debate I highlighted some of the history of it. The site was purchased complete with high quality security fencing to which the police had an access code to handle any ingression on the site, although it was a very difficult site to get onto with the security fencing that it was purchased with. That security system was almost instantaneously disabled. The fences basically have since fallen down, and the site was open to abuse almost from the moment that the present site owner took it over. Also, the marketing of the site for a care home, it was, a lot of it was done by the site owners or people behind the site. And I think we've heard the phrase damned by faint praise. And if you don't really want to sell something, it's quite easy not to sell it. And so I think that there wasn't a great effort made in that. The residents have been, and to their credit, they've certainly sort of kept the residents informed, but they've kept it informed with very much their own take on the story. The care home was going to be some sort of high-rise thing that, you know, was going to be bigger than the factory, and it was going to overshadow the nearby homes. So the whole thing just smacks of, well, you know, if someone was writing a new rule book of how to get round the local plan and to get planning permission against the grain, these people could make a fortune out of it, because quite frankly, they've done everything that they need to do to get residents on their side, maybe not being sort of totally transparent about it. As I say, I opposed it last time, I opposed it the time before. I would oppose it again, but I just felt it was granted last time, we lost the argument, and there was some speculation over the reasons why there was a call-in. Well, this is pure speculation, but the people who called this in were looking to another development in the same area, and I'm assuming that that was turned down. It never went to members through an officer's recommendation because it was counter to the local plan. That's pure speculation, because I don't know the facts or the history on that one, because I haven't seen the report on it. And if the fact that it was actually backed by the High Court means that it obviously wasn't regarded as a frivolous thing. They felt that there was a certain gravity to the challenge. As I say, I'm kind of a little bit on the fence with this one. I feel that we should be consistent with the local plan, and let's look at it again when the local plan is reviewed, and it should have been sorted by now, but it's still being kicked into the long grass. I still think, despite what officers say, I still think that the traffic aspect is one that I don't think we can carry on ignoring. That junction is atrocious. It's one of the biggest hold-ups in the area, and even the best of conditions. And I think that there needed to be a lot more done to sort it out. I do note the fact that I think they reluctantly went along with the pedestrian-only access to Alder Road, but I suspect that there will be a future application coming forward to increase access to this site, because I think the operator of the site is going to have problems with their delivery lorries and things like that. So I would be reluctant to support it, but I would be reluctant to stand in the way of this committee if they decide that they want to go against planning officers, but they need to come up with a good reason. So, I leave it there. I'm very much on the fence on this one, but inclined to think that if it does get granted, it gets granted against basically every rule in the book.
Thank you, Councillor Trent. Councillor Barron, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A question to Mr. Firth, if I may. Was the permission quashed because it went against the local plan, or because the committee failed to demonstrate strong enough reasons to go against it?
Chairman, as I understand it, it wasn't because it went against the local plan, it was because of an issue concerning the proper reflection of the reasons in the well, it's various issues relating to, primarily is a reasons issue, but it wasn't necessarily relating to what members expressly said. It was more to do with the way the reasons were captioned and dealt with in that way. So it wasn't that it was contrary to local plan as such.
Thank you, because in the last 4 years, I've seen plenty of applications that have been approved which have deviated against local plans. So surely if we can demonstrate sound reasons why we're deviating against the local plan, I mean, quite simply, the 400 residents that wrote in support of this application. Looking through, I've got many in my own ward, which is quite a distance away from Redlands. They had no input at all. I wouldn't have thought they had any input in the creation of that local plan at the time, and no say in it. I doubt very much. Before I was a councillor, I never even looked at local plans. They most people probably weren't even aware that was earmarked for care home. I just can't. I can't refuse this application. It just doesn't sit well with me at all. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, just if it helps members at all, just to remind them of what I think is a very starting point for any determination. So the general rule is determination should be in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So the development plan would be a local plan and adopted plans relating to that. But that doesn't mean you slavishly have to always follow the local plan if you think there are material considerations that indicate otherwise, and that can include matters such as benefits of this proposal, for example, but you need to be able to clearly justify that. And obviously starting point is you'd have to ask yourself, do I think it's contrary to the local plan? And if so, then you would be going with the local plan unless you felt there was clear justification to move away from that on the basis of material considerations.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. That point from Mr. Firth is helpful. And it does come down to whether we as a committee, we're at a disadvantage when we have these discussions, because obviously we don't have the capability to pop out and do a quick impact assessment on the Wallace Down the district centre. I think that the comments about how they got residents local support, 445 people, congratulations to a developer for managing to go out and get public support for a development. That never happens. How many times can we sit here and say that we've had it was 17 objections and 445 letters of support? That never happens. If they've managed to go out and get people supporting their development, and congratulations to them, in my book anyway. There was, I think, one part of the history that's been glossed over of this site is that there was a care home developer who looked at the site, who tried to put something in there as per the local plan, and found it to be completely unviable, and found it just wouldn't work. They couldn't make the numbers work. So, given that since then things have become far more difficult to make schemes viable, as we as planning committee members have seen, we've been able to approve precious little with affordable housing because it's costing builders so much to build that so much is now being found to be unviable. I can't see how all of a sudden a care home is now going to be viable once again. We cannot cling to that allocation forever. It seems to me that it was a mistake to allocate a site for a specific use, and only for a specific use, if you didn't have somebody lined up to build that specific use straight away. Otherwise, all you're doing is sealing off a bit of land that could be used. We're all constantly worried about our green belt being eaten into and not having brownfield sites developed as they need to be. And here we have a brownfield site that we're clinging to because we say it needs to be a care home. We're certainly not ignoring the equalities aspect in my book, because we're not choosing between an Aldi and a care home. There's no care home there. There's no specialist accommodation there, and there are no plans to build any there. So, I'm still in the same quandary as Councillor Ricketts. Every bit of me is screaming to support the move on the table because it makes absolute sense to do so, and yet, can I put together planning reasons to go against the officer's recommendation? And I haven't been able to yet. So I'll see if anybody else can have better luck, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm not. One is that we're not just talking about care homes. We're talking about specialist accommodation. So if that can just be remembered by everyone. And two, the Equalities Act. It's a really important piece of legislation, and we do not have much spare land in the conurbation, and planning process is there for a reason, to protect people with specialist characteristics, and this is the whole reason that it was successful at judicial review, or one of the reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lawton.
Can I just confirm with the planning officers, this application, was it turned down because we went against a local plan, or was it turned down or went to judicial review because we didn't follow the Equalities Act correctly?
There were several reasons for it.
It
wasn't to do with the local plan. It was several things. But could I ask either
I think
Alex
that's
or
absolutely right, Chairman.
Robert
It was not to do with the local plan. It wasn't specific to do with the Equalities Act, but that was raised as a ground of challenge. But it was more, as I said, to do with the procedures behind it all and recording of the reasons and how that was dealt with. So it wasn't specifically on the basis of...
So therefore, on this fresh application, are those concerns being addressed?
So just to confirm, Councillor, it's not a fresh application. The application has been returned to the committee for reconsideration because the original decision was quashed. It's the same application. What we've done in the report that we've published before you today is we've sought to refresh the assessment to see whether there's been any material change from when they first considered the application and today. And then we've been mindful to make sure that those issues raised in the claim before that came after your previous decision have been addressed. And we've put into the covering report that you've got before you today how we've assessed those issues that were raised and what bearing we think they have on the recommendation. So that we've fully covered the issue of equalities, and we've got a separate assessment which has been published and put in the public domain so that people can see the conclusion that we've reached as officers.
Chairman, if I may just on
Please
that,
do, Laura.
there is obviously focus on giving a lot of strong reasons for that, but obviously there was also another aspect that was raised in the claim, which was the equalities aspect, and I did cover some of that in my presentation. I have covered that in the latest committee report, but there hasn't been a lot of debate so far on that equalities aspect, and I'm not sure if that was what the councillor was saying, whether we've considered the whole aspect of that, and whether members have fully considered the equalities and what has been said there.
I think what I was saying was it went for judicial review. It wasn't turned down because we went against the local plan. It was turned down because a flaw in our process, whatever that flaw was. And all I'm asking is, has that flaw been corrected, which the officers just reassured me that it has. Therefore, I agree with Councillor Barron. We have in the past gone against local plan because we feel and are assured that it's right and a good development for that particular area, as Councillor O'Neill has mentioned in his opening statement. And I'm still, haven't changed my mind. I'm still of that view that we should grant this application.
I think, members, one of the things we have to remember on this is that if the move to grant is going to go forward, we do need specific reasons that we can defend, because there is absolutely no doubt that if we do grant this today, that anyone or someone, particularly another business, will challenge our decision again. And this is what happened last time. It wasn't overturned because we'd made the wrong decision. We have to remember that it was overturned because the decision reasons weren't given clearly and plainly enough, and they weren't specifically written about within that report. So we need to make sure that we cover off ourselves on equalities issues. Have we considered the equalities issues on that side? Then we also have, of course, PP16, which is employment. Now, I think if that were to be granted, that one could be overcome because it would still be an employment site. It would still be employing people. So it would get around that size. But it is the fact that we have to make sure that we cover off everything from the equalities impact side of this, and we make sure that we give the reasons correctly for that. There is obviously still a need for care homes. I think one of the things we have to get away from, and the specialist housing, is that it's not just old people that live in care homes. You have many people of a much younger generation that are there because of one reason or another. They may have an illness that their families can't contend with and need to have them in care homes to get that specialist full-time care. It's a really conscious thing that we have to do. I mean, personally, from my own personal perspective, I would not want a relative of mine being stuck in a nursing home or a care home in the middle of a retail estate. I think that would be most uncomfortable. They're entitled to a decent outlook on life, the same as everyone else is, with a decent view rather than just looking over the traffic whizzing past on Alder Hills and other people running into Sainsbury's, Homebase and places like that. it's a very, very difficult decision, but we must come up with reasons that our officers can support to go against the local plan. I think this is a reason where we could go against the local plan. I think it would be the right move to do so, but I'm struggling to find reasons that and policy reasons that we can come through on this. So I would ask the mover, and I'm yet to, so we need a seconder as well, but I am yet to come through with any specific policy reasons why we can, and reasons why we want to go against those such policies. Councillor Lawton. Thank you. Members, I'm going to do something very strange, and I'm going to call a 5-minute adjournment while we all sit and have a think about what we're going to do, and if you can come up with those policy reasons. I think it's really essential. We don't want this to keep coming backwards and forwards like a yo-yo. It's just not fair on the applicants. It's not fair on the residents. So take 5 minutes, think about what you're doing, think about what reasons you want to do and how you want to move forward with it. So we'll have a 5-minute adjournment before we Okay, members, we're now back in live session on this one to carry on the considerations for this application. Councillor O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do accept that this particular decision is a complex one for a number of reasons, not related or just related to the substance or otherwise of the equality assessment that was made. It's
Can we just pause while we close that window, please? Thank you.
Or push him off.
Carry on, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd say it is a difficult one. This it's a bit like the magic roundabout. This one, it keeps going round and coming back. We need to find a way to resolve it one way or the other. Jobs, economic benefits, public support, brownfield site usage have all been mentioned, but there does seem to be two things I think that suggest a solution. One is the employment opportunities themselves, which I think is important. The other is really related to the quality assessment that took place. And I think it's reasonable to say this forum, or in this forum, we've considered the appropriateness of the location for a care home and its location detail between the four aforementioned roads and being on a retail park, deem it unsuited. Indeed, an applicant did come forward, one applicant since 2016, who couldn't make the numbers stack up. So I think those considerations are quite important. The other one is there is a right of residence actually to have the right to shop in an economic environment. And I think those two factors, the employment opportunity, the siting and the lack of any aggressive piece of land since 2016 for a care home are all very relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the 5-minute break. And something occurred to me during that break, and it was that a few councillors here today were also sat on the, I think it was another oldie at the Staples site at Fleets Bridge. And they said, you know, it's going to lead to other stores closing and this, that and the other, and traffic and environment. And actually that store is now in place and it's working quite nicely. And it's actually a fairly similar site. And if someone had come forward, well, if the previous, you know, Poole Council's local plan said that the Staples building is earmarked for a care home, I'd be saying pretty much the same things as I'm saying today. It just wouldn't be a suitable place so. And I still do take umbrage with the suggestion that we didn't consider the Equalities Act, because that was one of my sort of main reasons at the time for going against the officer's recommendation in the first place, because that's exactly what I was doing, was thinking I was having compassion for people and saying that isn't a suitable site for that. So I'll still be supporting the move. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pedevin, please.
Yes, I'm afraid, Chair, I've got to take issue with your comments immediately before the break about potential residents of a care home on that site being in the middle of a retail park. No, it's on the edge of a retail park. It's secluded from a retail park and overlooking the traffic thundering past on Alder Road. No, the site is already very well screened and could probably be even better screened if it was necessary. So your characterisation of the site, I'm afraid, was a bit inaccurate and a bit emotional, shall we say, emotional blackmail, in my view, as someone who distance of the site and knows it well.
Not at all. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in a care home next to a Sainsbury's or next to a home-based store. So that's my opinion. That's why I said I wouldn't want to live in the middle of a retail park, whether it be on the edge, the front, the back, or the rear. It's in a retail park, end of. I mean, right opposite, you have John Lewis, you have Decathlon. What else would you want in a retail park? We still have not had any good policy reasons Mr. Cruikshank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So maybe perhaps some assistance to Councillor Neil, if I can just summarise back to you the reasons you've articulated, provide some advice and see if we can firm up what the reasons would be for the motion to allow the committee to proceed to a vote. So see, I've got too many pieces of paper now. Here we are. So in the reasons you just raised were jobs and the economic benefit of the site coming forward. You've also mentioned the fact that it's important in the reasons you put forward that this site has been vacant for some time and this would provide development on a vacant site. Whenever we're looking at reasons to go with any decision, we need to sort of remember the weighing scales. So in this instance, you've got the weighing scales. On one hand, you've got the elements that weigh against approval of this proposal, including the fact that this is a departure from the local plan. And you need to identify those things on the weighing scales that sit on the other side to offset that. What I would suggest is that you are cognizant and keep in mind that when you are looking to give weight to the fact that this site has not come forward for an alternative use and has not come forward for a care home use, that the site has not been actively marketed. So one of the things which is in the papers before you is that marketing exercise has not been undertaken. So I would suggest you give slightly less weight to that element in your considerations when you're putting it onto the weighing scales, because that marketing is not in place. Similarly, one of the other elements that was raised in your comments was that level of public support. Government guidance says that we shouldn't use the weight of public opinion to influence planning decisions. Planning decisions are meant to be made on planning reasons. So again, I would urge you to give limited weight to the factors of public support and how you come up with that balancing exercise. So where we've got to is we've got the jobs, the economic development and the redevelopment of the site you see as a key benefit. You have identified the public support, although I've urged caution of how much weight you give to that. And then you've also talked about the appropriateness of the location. The advice I'd give is that you as the planning committee are the defenders of the local plan. The local plan says that this site has been allocated for a care home. That doesn't mean that it ties your hands and it can only ever be a care home, because any planning decision made where there are material planning considerations that come forward to outweigh what the policy originally says. But I would urge caution by using factors such as this should never have been a site for a care home, because the local plan has gone through a full and robust process to get to that allocation. So I think you need to think more about what is it about what this site is today in terms of the history since the local plan has been adopted. What has changed? What is different? What has changed in the surrounding environment, the nature of the surrounding environment, which means that the decision that was made when the local plan was originally adopted may be less relevant today, and you think that other things should be taken into consideration. So if I would suggest you might want to make further comment on the surrounding area, the nature of the area, that might bolster your position in terms of why you think this site is unsuitable for the use allocated within the local plan.
Yeah, please do, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you for that advice, which is understood. I would observe that the retail park has been a process of development for many years, but its consolidation is as a retail park. Therefore, the proposal and its location is best suited to the development of retailing. And I believe that a store, whoever it be, a store, but in this case Aldi, and a coffee shop is a completion of that retail park.
Completion of that process. Thank you. I think listening, and I've been making notes fervently here, and this seems like it's a virtually split decision with the way that members are talking here today. And although I think you're all right in what you're saying for different reasons, I think the one thing that the applicants have not done, which they should probably have done and haven't done, is they have not produced evidence that they have actually marketed that property and site. When they purchase it it was probably already in the local plan. I don't know for certain whether it was or not, but they did know it was allocated as a nursing care, whatever type of home. I would dearly love to grant this today, but if I do, and the way I've worked this out at the moment, there are 7 people talking for it, 7 people talking against it, which would mean I would have a casting vote. I'm not prepared to do that. So I'm going to side with refusing the application or asking for a deferment. I don't want to defer it. Again, we're just kicking it into the long grass. I think the best way forward for this at this moment in time is to probably go for a refusal, to give the applicants the opportunity to go away, spend a couple of months doing some marketing work and come back, and also to allow the officers to re-look at the allocation on the local plan, whether or not it is feasible to go against that, whether the local plan is now old enough that we can say, well, it was okay back in 2018, we're now in 2023. Do we need to re-look at that? Do we give it the full weight that was supported before? And I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to come to a decision which is agreeable, acceptable for all concerned, both residents, officers and applicants. I'm not trying to use a coward's way out, but I do, having listened to you all and listened to the officers, I think that would be the best way to go forward at this moment in time. Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Chairman. I take on board what you've said there. I think the advice I would like to give, building on what Alex has said, is that there are a number of factors here that I want to make sure that we're making a robust decision as a local planning authority, and we need to advise you accordingly. I think it's absolutely right. The Chairman's just raised the issue about the marketing of the site for the local plan allocation, and that's the one thing that I feel that the applicants haven't demonstrated for us to take that on board. I think the second element is that the impact on the retail area in Wallersdown. We have an expert report that we've commissioned that says there is harm there. We would need to have very clear reasons for balancing that harm with approving it if that's the line we go down. The other thing I'm hearing a lot of this morning is the local plan allocation. We're about to draft or about to publish a new draft local plan for the whole of the BCP area, which will include site allocations in the autumn. I'm very happy for us to go away and look at that and just test whether we've got that right or wrong. And I think that there's a very clear message to me that that's something that we need to be looking at. So I think we can give more clarity on that in the slightly longer term. And then I think the final 2 issues for me are around the reason that the judicial review was successful. And I've no doubt that if we go down the route of the local planning authority approving this scheme for a second time, that we will certainly be tested and potentially challenged with another judicial review. So I'd want to be comfortable that we as a local planning authority have addressed those reasons for approval in a robust way, and we've addressed the public sector equality duty, which were the 2 things that were raised in the court when the decision was quashed. So hopefully that gives you a bit of guidance as to how we need to make sure we are, as a local planning authority, making a robust decision. Thank you.
Could I just bring Mr. Firth in, please?
Chairman, it's primarily a matter of fact, but just to clarify, and Laura can probably confirm this, just to be clear, my understanding is not that a marketing exercise has never been done, it's that the marketing exercise was done, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago, and it hasn't been reviewed since that point. It wasn't acceptable at that time either, but Laura can perhaps just clarify the circumstances of that.
Laura, if you would, please.
Yes, Mr. Firth, that's correct. The marketing hasn't been carried out since about 2016, and that is an issue with the site on that basis, as they haven't complied with that aspect of the policy. There has been opportunity to obviously do so since the last application was refused, and in the process of this application, there's nothing to stop the applicant from marketing the site whilst an application is being considered even. Going forward, that might be something we'll try and review in the local plan to instruct applicants to carry on marketing the site. Although, to be fair to the applicants, on the other hand, it has taken a long time to go through. So, having done marketing a couple of years ago, that might be a couple of years out of date. What I probably would interject on that about the marketing is, my advice is you can still, make a decision on it, even in the absence of that marketing, even if they haven't complied with the policy, in the absence of that marketing. And I suppose the bottom line there is to consider whether, in the absence of that marketing, whether you still think it would be there would be any interest in developing the site for that use.
Thank you, Laura. Councillor O'Neill, you wanted to come back?
If I could just ask, it's a point of detail, and it's maybe my lack of understanding. The applicant marking the site in their own right, isn't that like giving them the ball and 2 goals? How will that neutrality be perceived? Because it's patently obvious that other retailers will object, and we're very well aware of the reasons why they object. Thank you.
Alex, do you want to answer that one?
Thank you. So whenever we have any evidence provided by the applicant in the nature that you've suggested, then that is subject to a full review of your officers. And in those circumstances, and for technical elements, such as the retail impact assessment that's been referred to elsewhere within this item, then when necessary, we get external expert advice to make sure that we hold people to account and check that what's been submitted to us is appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Trent.
Mr. Chairman, just trying to be helpful here. Way back, and I don't know whether it still applies now, it was possible to look at a defined area and produce a sort of a local plan that fed into the main local plan to review the situation. Since the local plan was prepared and it was approved in November 2018, there have been additional sites that have become available for consideration for care homes. And I am encouraged that we're getting something back in the autumn because the local plan seems to have been sort of in abeyance for a long time. But if it were possible to have a sort of like a localized local plan to review the situation, whether that would be helpful.
Are you referring to like a neighbourhood plan? Similar to Broadstone, similar to Folkestone, for example?
Yeah, we used to do something a little bit different, but I can't remember the exact terminology of it, but it was sort of, it was a local plan that contributed towards the local plan. I don't think it was a neighbourhood plan. I think the neighbourhood plans have been invented since. But, you know, I think there is actually, because there are so many potential development sites in that area and some with major constrictions, that it wouldn't do any harm to actually have a particular study of that area. You could define an area and look at it in sort of detail, which may or may not affect the local plan. I'm just a bit, as I say, I'm not prepared to either stand in the way or support the plan. But, you know, I do think we should go through the proper process. And I was just suggesting that as a possible way forward, but for the point of view of those overlooking the site, which at the moment is at least cleared and so on, as long as it gets managed by the site owner, because we've had issues with that in the past.
Okay.
You know, it could be looked at ahead of the main local plan.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Trent. Any officers wish to come in before? Oh, Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chairman. I couldn't see on the portal, but is the applicant the owner of the site? So they own it on the land registry. They own it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. The little break was helpful to me, I think, and I have decided which way I'll go on this, which I didn't think I would for a lot longer. I think for me the big issue is that marketing, because it's the one area of policy that isn't coming down to our judgment call. It's the one thing where demonstrably the policy has not been fulfilled purely as a matter of fact, as opposed to our thoughts on whether or not that site is suitable for a care home. They haven't fulfilled the policy on there. There's been very little to prevent them from doing so, and certainly updating it. And I think that's the one part for me where I can't overlook that, and it's frustrating beyond belief. But for that reason, I just cannot support. I cannot support the move. None of the planning reasons that I could think of to overturn the officer's recommendation can get past that one problem. So I will not be supporting the move.
Councillor O'Neill.
I fear this is going to come back again and haunt us. Is it possible at all, subject to a vote perhaps, that we can condition this, that the officer and head of legal review the marketing or the outcome of marketing with, if it's acceptable, the result, they can actually approve on our behalf, and if it's unacceptable, we can't do that.
I think in fairness, I think that's a no-no. I think that the applicants are here. They've heard all of your comments from all of us here today, be it for, against, indifferent or whatever. And I think everyone has come back and all the officers have said the major stumbling point is the lack of marketing. Now, we know that they own the site, and of course that could work either way. They could market it to death, they could market it to their own advantage. Other applicants, other retailers may come in and object to anything that they do, but that is something that would have to take its course. I don't think it's right that we play bat and ball with the judicial review system, going backwards and forwards to the High Court to let them decide this every single time, because at the moment the way things are going is we're going to say yes, someone else is going to come along and say, well, you didn't take this into consideration, you didn't take that into consideration, we're going to judicially review you again, and it's going to go backwards and forwards. We really have to make sure we are crossing the T's and dotting the I's on this one, to make sure it's an absolutely correct decision. And the decision you make as board members has to be right. We all know what we want to do. We all sit here now and we're all saying it should be a supermarket. You know, I say not all of us, but a fair amount of us are. And we have to give everyone the opportunity to get that right, so that we can all make a decision that we are going to be comfortable with, and not keep putting the authority to the expense of having to defend judicial reviews because of something that we've maybe overlooked or misrepresented in that way. I would ask Councillor O'Neill to consider whether or not he wishes to continue with his move to grant, or whether he would wish to remove that move, and we would then go on to a move to refuse this application. You have made the move, Councillor O'Neill. It is in your court. In that case,
Chairman, before we move, I think we also need to address the issue of conditions, and we'll probably clarify the reasons for refusal as well. I think a reason for approval, I think Alex can go through that, but we also need to consider the issue of conditions. Laura's, you actually, unusually in this situation, now have some conditions before you didn't have last time, which was on the previous approval. Laura can clarify, I suspect, whether she thinks those conditions are still appropriate or not, and members can decide, or the mover can decide whether you want to take those conditions on board, or indeed come up with any other conditions that you felt appropriate.
Yep. Laura, could you confirm that if this were to be granted, then the conditions you have on the previous one would be acceptable for this one, please?
Yes, I see no reason why you couldn't conditions. Nothing has changed within the application itself that would render those conditions any different.
Thank you very much, Laura. Appreciate that. And actual reasons for going against the officer's recommendation.
And just to clarify, are you happy to take those conditions on board?
Mike, Tony?
the employment, the retail opportunity to the public at large, the fact that the site has been vacant for 10 years, has been marketed without success, albeit some years ago, and also the fact that it is a retail park. It's been a retail park, a developing retail park. This fits quite logically within it. It's not suited for a care home location.
Mr. Chairman, so we'll make a note of that. If I just so I think your wording identified this, but you're saying that notwithstanding the marketing, you recognise that the site has been vacant for a long period of time, and also the comment you made in your earlier comments was that the nature of the surrounding area has changed in previous years since the local plan in relation to how this would now sit into it.
Yeah, it's evolved and expanded as a retail park.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Any comments before I move to the vote, please? No.
Chairman, if I may, just to clarify again, just on, I'm looking at the reasons for refusal that were put forward. We obviously have that issue of trade diversion as well. Is there have you thought about to extent is that covered?
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, I summarise that the catchment area for Wallasdown is quite different. A lot of the houses surrounding them north of Wallasdown shop at the Wallasdown shops. The reality is, I think the other reality is that any lady that shops will tell you they don't buy all their products in one store anyway. I don't see a massive move from Wallasdown to the retail park at Redlands.
So just to, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, please,
Pernickety. So the points you've made is that you've identified the desire for local people to have a choice of shopping facilities and a choice of retail opportunities, notwithstanding the information before you in the retail assessment and the way it's been reviewed. You do not consider the catchment areas to be affected, and you do not believe that the retail impact will be as has been set out in the officer's assessment.
Yeah, I think the other comment, not related to this, but the word harm was used. Harm is a very broad church, and it means different things to different people. Harm can be a scratch or it can be a cut. I think that personally that it would be a scratch and not a cut.
Okay, Alex, are you happy that you've got enough there?
Yeah, I don't think we'll have the scratch and the cut.
No.
Absolutely.
Okay, members.
We've bled enough.
So the move is to grant the application. If you could say whether you are for that move or against, please. Councillor Barron.
For.
Councillor Borthwick. Councillor Bull.
Against.
Councillor Davies. Councillor Hall. Councillor Hilliard.
Against.
Councillor Lawton.
For.
Councillor Lepedevin.
Against.
Councillor O'Neill.
For.
Councillor Rice.
Against.
Councillor Trent. And Councillor Ricketts.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
And I reluctantly, because I would really like to grant this, but I do not feel we are in a position to do so, I am also going to go against this move at this time. But I do want the applicants to realise the keenness for something to happen on that site and for them to make sure that they are doing what is needed to put their applications through. Just for clarity, could I have the numbers, please, Jill?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so that was 8 votes against the move, 5 votes for and 1 abstention, so that move was not carried.
So that move is lost. So therefore, I will make a move to refuse that application. Seconded by Councillor Johnson.
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, we'll go through this.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Are you moving to refuse application on the basis of the officer's recommendation?
Yes.
Published papers?
Yes. Thank you, Alex. So again, Councillor Barron.
Against.
Councillor Borthwick. Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Davies. Councillor Hall.
Against.
Councillor Hilliard.
For.
Councillor Lawton. Councillor Lawton.
For.
Councillor Lepedevin.
For.
Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Trent. Councillor Ricketts.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
And myself also for. Therefore, the numbers, please, Jill.
I have 9 votes for the move, 4 against and 1 abstention.
Therefore, that application is refused as in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much, members, for a very thorough, very thorough debate on that one. We'll move straight on And we'll go straight on to item 6B, which is 19A Roselle Road in Poole. And I would ask Sophie if you could prepare to present your case, please, Sophie. And thank you very much to Laura for her presentation on the previous application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Can't hear you, Laura. Sophie, I'm afraid. You're very, very faint.
Is that any better?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Pedovin, you have your mic on.
And can you see my screen?
We can, thank you, Sophie.
Okay. The application in front of you today is at 19A Roselle Road in Poole, and it seeks full planning permission to demolish the existing dwelling and replace it with 3 detached dwellings. It has been called in by Councillor Dion for the reasons outlined in the report. So the broad location, it's at the end of cul-de-sac within a sustainable transport corridor. Ashley Road is to the north, just off the map, and Bournemouth Road is to the south. In terms of pattern of development within the area, the existing site is larger than the majority of sites along Roselle Road. There is currently permission for 2 dwellings at the site, which has not yet been implemented, as outlined in the report. So some site photos. This is the application site. As you can see, it's a bungalow, quite traditional style. Then the rear of the existing dwelling. And then here's some images of the boundary treatment. And then this is looking up towards the site. So as you can see, some of the neighbouring dwellings are 2-storey with the application site just up here. Here's the proposed site plan. The scheme seeks to split the plot vertically into 3 plots with 3 detached dwellings. The front and rear building lines are generally...
Sophie, can I just... Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Thank you, Sophie. Would like to carry on, please?
So here's the proposed site plan. The scheme seeks to split the plot vertically into 3 plots with 3 detached dwellings. The front and rear building lines are generally in line with that of 19 Roselle Road, ensuring continuity. The existing access would be widened and shared by the dwellings, with 1 car parking space per dwelling and turning area to the front of the site in accordance with the parking SPD. Here are the proposed site plans. This shows the floor plan for Unit 1, although all are very similar. Each dwelling will provide 3 bedrooms with a living room and dining room on the ground floor to provide an acceptable standard of amenity for future occupiers with regards to outlook, natural light, and the provision of amenity space to the rear. Here are some elevations. Each dwelling would be 2 storeys in height with a hipped roof and front gable. Proposed materials are somewhat contemporary. However, given the lack of consistency seen within the area, these are considered acceptable. With regards to impact on neighbouring amenity, there have been a number of objections raised, particularly regarding loss of privacy to the dwellings to the rear along Earlham Drive. There is approximately 8 metres between the rear elevation of the proposed dwellings and the shared boundary to the rear, and approximately 25 metres between the proposed dwellings and the living room of the window of the development approved at number 9 Earlham Drive. Therefore, whilst the scheme will likely result in some loss of privacy to these dwellings, such levels of overlooking are not uncommon within such urban areas, and similar relationships can be seen within the immediate surrounding area. In accordance with PP 37, a condition to ensure details of the measures that are to be implemented to achieve 10% of the energy needs through renewable sources is proposed. A condition to ensure biodiversity enhancements in accordance with PP 33 is also proposed. I do also wish to add that since the time of writing the report, 3 more representations have been received, 2 in support and 1 in objection. Those in support discuss how the existing dwelling is run down, there is plenty of parking, sunlight to neighbouring dwellings will not be impacted, and how the design of the scheme will improve the road. The letter objecting discusses concerns with parking and how the proposal will increase congestion. All the concerns raised are already covered in the report. So to sum everything up, the proposal provides a net increase of 2 dwellings within a sustainable area. The scheme is considered to be policy compliant, and BCP Highways Authority have raised no objection. All representations received have been taken into account, however, having recognised the collective benefits of the scheme and the tilted balance approach, it is considered that the scheme would achieve the economic, environmental and social objectives of sustainable development in line with local and national planning policy. The scheme is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the completion of Section 106 to secure the required contributions towards Dorset Heathlands and Poole Harbour recreation sands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Jill.
Thank you, Chairman. There are two objectors who are speaking. First is Chris Marsden, who is here in person. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Marsden, you have about 2.5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Marsden. I'm the owner of number 9 Earlham Drive. My property shares a boundary with number 19A. An important observation, I think, is that in March 2016, an application for a single dwelling, single story, was refused. And what's happening on this site now, where an application for 3 two-story detached properties, I think really illustrates the tactic of slowly catch your monkey. In 2019, I carried out a ground floor extension to my property. It created a core living space where myself and my family, 3 kids and a dog, spend most of our time together. The area has large windows and bifold doors that look directly onto our garden space and onto the number 19A boundary. Now, the proposed developments, if approved, would have direct sight into that core space, and clearly a pretty severe impact on our privacy. The pool planning policy is clear. It says that if there is a harmful impact on privacy, it should not be allowed. Now, I'm not anti-development at all. In fact, I'm quite pro-development, but we can't ignore privacy entirely. And whereas previous applications, not the one that was refused in 2016, but there was a previous one, again, you can see the tactic being used, where there were 2 properties that were sympathetically positioned, so they wouldn't have quite the direct visual view onto our core living space. That's now been forgotten about. The developer wants to extract more from the site, and so they've gone for 3, but they're going 3 because the only way you can fit it in is directly looking in. And I would say that is unacceptable, and we have to look at all the factors here. For those reasons, we need to strike the right balance. We need to refuse this application or introduce conditions limiting it to 2 properties sympathetically positioned. That's everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And the second speaker statement from Mr. Andrew Creedy of Roselle Road. I object to planning permission being granted for this property for the following reasons. The road is already very difficult to access for large emergency vehicles due to the density of parking from residents of this road and surrounding roads. If any vehicles are parked on the bend in the road, it is impossible for large vehicles to get past the bend. Local schools are already oversubscribed, and this would add to the problem if these are family dwellings. Parents use the road as a cut-through to walk their children to Court Hill School, and any additional traffic will be a hazard. The builders of these properties would be unable to park in the road, as they would have to park over residents' driveways. Large delivery vehicles would have great difficulty accessing the site and would be unable to turn in the road. As it is, the waste collectors have to reverse along the road from Richmond Road. Planning has already been granted for the property on the corner of Richmond Road and Bournemouth Road with no extra parking allocated. As this is the nearest road without yellow lines, it will most likely be used for parking. I mention this because additional properties requiring parking will severely impact on existing residents.
Thank you very much. Sophie, is there anything that you've heard that you would like to come back? I'm sorry, apologies. Councillor Dion. Have we got support for it? Sorry. One moment, Councillor Dion.
Beg your pardon, Chairman.
Yeah, my fault. Totally missed that on the paper.
So speaking in support is Matt Annan on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, members. The planning officer has comprehensively explained the full details of the history and the proposed scheme in our opening presentation to you. I wish to now briefly outline the main considerations why we feel planning permission should be granted today in line with the officer's recommendation. Firstly, looking at the principle and the character. As you'll be aware, BCP Council is a shortfall in housing, and as such the benefits provided from the supply of new homes must have significant weight and a tilted balance in favour of granting planning permission. As you've heard, the principle of subdivision of this site for two-storey houses has been accepted under the extant and live planning permission. Overdevelopment has been raised by neighbours for the 3 dwellings on this plot, with little evidence to reinforce this claim. However, density is a quantifiable factor. The existing site is one of the largest plots on Roselle Road and has an area of 0.08 hectares. The redevelopment of the site with 3 dwellings results in a density of 37.5 dwellings per hectare. Due to the layout of Roselle Road and the variety of dwellings within the street, there is not a consistent pattern of development nor a consistent plot size. The density in the road ranges from number 11, which is a density of 20 dwellings per hectare, right up to 52 dwellings per hectare for number 1 Roselle Road. Number 21 Roselle Road, which is directly to the north, has a density of 43 dwellings per hectare. So mathematically speaking, the proposed density of 37.5 cannot be considered out of character in the street scene. Other factors, of course, can contribute to overdevelopment. However, the proposed development would meet those measures as well. All 3 dwellings meet the nationally minimum space standards for a 3-bedroom, 5-person family dwelling. The built form is of scale and design which would not detrimentally impact on the character of the area, with sufficient car parking provision in line with the SPD and appropriately sized south-facing private garden spaces, similar to that of number 19 Roselle Road next door, who incidentally wrote in support of the scheme. As a result, your officers consider that the scheme is appropriate and would be in keeping with the surrounding pattern of development, would have an acceptable impact on character and appearance of the area in accordance with PP 27 and 28 of the local plan. Secondly, amenity. Given the proposed sightings of dwellings, the floor plan layouts and window arrangements of the scheme would not lead to any harmful overlooking or overdevelopment of adjacent neighbours either side. With regards to the relationship of first floor windows on the rear of the proposed dwellings with number 9 and 10 Earlham Drive, the windows sit approximately 8 metres from the mutual intervening boundary, which is screened, which is not dissimilar to the previously approved scheme on site where the approved arrangement was 10 metres from the rear boundary. Your professional officer has covered this in her report and her presentation to you today. This arrangement would not lead to material harm in terms of overlooking. As noted at paragraph 49 of your report, mutual overlooking of this type is not uncommon within built-up areas such as this within a tight urban grain, and other similar examples are provided. Thirdly, highways. As you have heard, some representations have noted that there is an existing parking problem in Roselle Road due to people parking from other streets such as Manfield Road and Richmond Road where there is no parking. However, this development cannot be penalised by existing parking pressures. This development has sufficient parking to meet its own needs. Your highways officer is in support of the scheme, which provides 1 off-street parking space per dwelling, each with electric vehicle charging points, and a stall for 3 cycles for each dwelling, in line with the adopted SPD. Council says this scheme would help the council meet its housing targets, deliver 3 small family dwellings in a sustainable location, whilst not detrimentally impacting on the character appearance or highway safety. This home would be perfect for young couples looking to get on the property ladder. I therefore hope you agree with your officer's recommendation to grant planning permission and vote in favour of approving this proposal accordingly. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Councillor Dion.
Thank you, committee. I'm Councillor Brian Dion from Penn Hill. We've obviously heard arguments on both sides, but I want to just check some of the facts. So in 2015, Poole Council rejected building a second building on that site. In 2019, it was approved for a second building. In 2022, they renewed it. Over the past 6 years, they haven't done anything with the site, and now they want to add a third building to a very crowded site in the first place. Roselle Road, as you all know because you've been there, is a very narrow, congested street. and adding 3 houses will result in additional hardship to the neighborhood. And unfortunately, we're trading down the quality of life for everybody in that neighborhood by bringing more people into an already overdeveloped site. There's lack of privacy, congestion. It's not accessible site for 3 houses, generally speaking. PP 34, I think we could look at accessible. It's also in violation of PP 26 in height and scale in its aspect to the rear boundary, which Mr. Marston is the owner of that property. So it's going to contribute to the loss of privacy, increased traffic due to the increased density, and I urge committee members to listen to residents and refuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Deere. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, this is not a time for questions or statements from the public floor. They're not allowed. Yeah, you need to come to a microphone if you're going to speak. This needs to be a clarification of a factual point, please. Yep, first one.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I am the owner of 19 Roselle Road, and we have planning permission to retain it as a bungalow. And I am moving into that bungalow as the owner. The present owners, because I have given them notice to move, the gentleman mentioned that that they are in full compliance with the building next door. They've only done that because I've given them notice to move out in May.
Thank you. Derek, will you turn that microphone off, please? The one next to you, Derek. Thank you. Okay, Sophie, is there anything that you've heard that you would like to come back on, please?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, over to yourselves for debate on this. Who would like to start, please? Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been looking at the rejected proposal from 2015. So this was to retain the bungalow as is, but build a second bungalow on part of a garden. That was refused because essentially effect of a living space on future occupiers of 2019A and neighbours. Then looking at the approval for in what date was that? In May 22. So this was for a second property, so it was to demolish the bungalow and build 2 properties, because the spacing was different and the profiles were different, and obviously it does look more spacious. Now what's before us now seems to be fitting 3 in, seems to go back to the 2015 issue of space between and the impact on future users and future neighbours. If the officer could just comment on the inspector's decision in 2015 and why she thinks that the space is now sufficient. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you look at the 2015 permission, the refusal reason discusses it being quite contrived and also discusses the location of parking. The building line does come quite far forward with the existing bungalow. That's not the case anymore, so it is just quite, if I could quickly share my screen. Yeah, so that was the 2015. So it's a very different form of development that's proposed under this. The parking's been normalised, and also that was before the policy that we are now using to assess this application.
Thank you for clarifying that. And one other point is the current bungalow, would that be allowable for any permitted development? So going up second story, potentially looking out Earlham Road and Earlham Drive and other roads, is permitted development allowed? Thank you.
I'm not aware of any Article 4s on it to prevent permitted development, so likely yes.
Thank you for confirming. Can I just ask the officer about the questions of privacy? I understand from the resident who lives there, and I think Councillor Dion has mentioned it. Can I just be assured that the privacy is not their lack of or is going to affect their living?
Well, I think in the report we discuss how there will be some lost privacy, but how it's not considered to be materially harmful. It's 8 metres from the rear elevation to the shared boundary and about 25 metres from the rear elevation to the rear elevation of the other property. And, you know, while it is accepted there is some overlooking, this isn't uncommon in the built up areas. It can be seen within the immediate surrounding areas. So as I said, it's not considered to be materially harmful.
Sophie, would you mind sharing your screen with the current plan and just highlighting on the screen what that relationship is that you're talking about so members are clear where the distances are?
Yeah, here. There you go.
Laura, Sophie, sorry, I wonder if you could just use your mouse to indicate boundaries from the properties that we are discussing today.
Yeah, so it's about 8 metres to here, and then you can't actually see number 9 Earlham on this. Approval at number 9 Earlham. So from here to here, it's 25 metres. From here to here, I believe it's around 17. I believe there's just first floor windows on this, and then from here to here, it's about 8.
Thank you very much for that, Sophie. Yep. Any further comments or anyone? Councillor Pedwin.
Yeah, it's a question. What is the distance between the 3 properties? That is between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3.
I would need to check, but I imagine around 1 metre or so.
Sorry, Sophie, did you say 1 metre?
Yeah, but I would need to check that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Quite tight. I was thinking of maintenance and that, you know, access.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's been highlighted by Councillor Hillard, looking at your screen, there's been a number of applications to this site. 2015, single-storey development refused. 2018, demolish and construct 2-storey dwellings. March 22, demolish and construct 2 new houses. And more recently, November 22, demolish and construct 3 detached houses. There is an intensification on this site, and scale and mass does concern me. I think it is out of character to the area, and it is and will prove overbearing. We have rejected applications in the past because they are overlooking of main rooms, and indeed on occasions conservatories where we've been duly concerned. I've actually visited both the affected site and the existing site and looked over the gates and the fences. And my observations are thus really. 9 Earlham Road, it backs onto the applicant's site in full. And Earlham Road is a modest house which with approval has been extended at the back to the tune of about probably 30 to 35 feet. And that extension overlooks the garden and it is fully glazed. In fact, if it was on sandbanks, it would be comparable. So with approval, fully glazed, and what you have is a family room, a kitchen, and very much a seating play area. And that gives this growing family the space that they required and had approval for. I think this development on Roswell Road will be obtrusive to the enjoyment of that extension and to their property at large, because their full garden, which is very much a children's play area and well kept garden, I would observe, is overlooked by the main accommodation. And equally, these 3 houses would be overlooking that garden and that accommodation. So I think on the basis of scale, mass and intrusion to privacy, that this application as it stands should be refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Sorry, you said scale, mass?
Yeah, the scale mass of the development on the site that's permitted And also the overlooking is, to me, would be a serious consideration given the extension that was approved and is fully glazed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do you have a seconder for that move? Councillor Miller-Pedvin, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second that. But I've also probably got reasons to add if Councillor O'Neill is willing. One is the point I've just highlighted, the closeness and therefore living conditions of.
I can confirm, sorry, that is 1 metre between the properties.
Right. Well, if it's definitely only 1 metre, that confirms my concerns. And also the overdevelopment, I think Councillor O'Neill's mentioned that, but also out of character. Yes, there's a wide variety of dwellings in that, ranging from quite small, very clearly single-storey bungalows to substantial Victorian, almost villas, but not like this and not so cramped in, so out of character.
Thank you, Councillor Pedderman. Councillor Ricketts.
Yeah, I completely agree. I drove down there the other day to have a look at this, and I mean, for a start, it's really tight. I mean, just turning around, you've got another vehicle that's sitting down there as well, and it gets very, very complicated. I could see that this development, you know, they're looking at the houses themselves in any other place, you know, the proportions and everything, it looks fine. They're far too close together. A metre really doesn't give enough space to get up to unblock your drains, and you know it's living with that is really difficult. But the main impact for me was the loss of the residential amenities, the living amenities for those neighbouring properties, the loss of their privacy, their kids being able to play in their gardens without being overlooked. I think it's, I just don't think it's right for this area. So I agree that on the grounds, as given that it's overdevelopment of the site and it's loss of neighbouring amenities.
Thank you, Councillor Ricketts. Any further comments from members at this time? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I will not be supporting that move. I think we've heard that the distance between the two properties is 25 metres. 25 metres in an urban area here is far more than you would reasonably expect when you move into a house in terms of overlooking and gaps between windows. We have approved blocks of flats with fully glazed windows closer to each other than that. I can't see that being enough to overturn the presumption in favour of sustainable development. These are good sized family homes that are well designed. They have been designed as well as they possibly can to not overlook, and the other properties any development on that site will overlook because it's surrounded by gardens. That's what it's going to do. But I don't believe it's close enough to any of the livable windows around there to overcome the planning reasons for approval. I think that in terms of the traffic and things like that, it's already approved for 2 dwellings on that site. It's already tight. This is not going to make it any worse, in my opinion. All of the parking will be removed and put on the site, so it's taking parking off the road. It won't make it any better, but it certainly won't make it any worse, in my opinion. You know, we're always looking in this committee. We've seen so many developments that are flats coming up in areas just like this one, and we've all said that we want to see good-sized family homes. Well, here we have 3 good-sized family homes going into a place where there is no presiding character in terms of in a planning sense around there. All of the dwellings are different shapes, different sizes, different designs. So I think this blends in quite nicely. I'm not worried about the gap between the buildings. That's a very common relationship to have between 3 new homes like that. I mean, if there were terraced houses, we wouldn't even be talking about it. They'd all share a wall. But you know, I can't see anything here in planning terms that overturns the presumption in favour of sustainable development, Chair. So I cannot be supportive of the motion to refuse.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Alex, are you happy with the reasons given for the move?
If I may summarise them back to the move, Mr. Chairman, and make a suggestion for the 3rd reason. So the notes I have before me, so if you could clarify I've got the correct understanding, is that Notwithstanding the range and character of this area, you consider that the scale and mass of these proposed dwellings are inconsistent and would have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the local area. That's reason for refusal 1. Reason for refusal 2 is that there is a degree of overbearing and overlooking from the proposed properties that would impact on the residential amenity of, in particular, 9 Earlham Road. That's reason for refusal 2. If I can return to the second suggestion for reason for refusal 3, which is about the spacing between the properties. I think there's 2 ways you can look at this. So there's a functional element and there's an aesthetic element. The functional element, there is a metre gap between those properties. So there is a functional ability for someone to, for example, walk between the properties to get access to the rear garden, to take bins there or whatever. So functionally, I'm not sure that you would have strong grounds to say that the gap between the buildings is unacceptable. However, the spacing of those buildings very close together does go to the core of how they are perceived in terms of their character and how they're perceived and the visual impact that they have on the area. So what I would suggest is you include that concern about the lack of physical separation between these buildings, making them look more of a mass, into reason for refusal 1 as another factor as to why you think these developments might look out of keeping with the local area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Pedman.
Yeah, I take the point that a metre wide, you can walk down, you can just about wheel your bin down, you can wheel a bicycle down if you've got a bicycle in the back. But I'm thinking of maintenance. I mean, you know, clearing gutters. A metre doesn't give you enough spread for a ladder. It means your ladder's virtually vertical. And I'm not a builder and I'm not a maintenance person and I'm not a DIYer, but I'm sure you need more than a metre space to get the foot of the ladder out.
Alex?
So it's the proximity for that, not for access, but for maintenance.
I think this is where we come to a situation that planning has a beginning, middle and an end. So planning legislation covers some elements of what we do and other legislation covers other elements of what we do. We don't have a planning policy that says there must be a minimum space for maintenance next to properties. And as other councillors have mentioned during the debate, there's a variety of properties, house types, flats and other sort of developments that we have within this area and with any area where there will be some which have lots of space for maintenance and some that don't. That is something that any person looking to purchase that property in the future will have to take into consideration. That's a decision for them to make. So I'm not sure that you have planning grounds to raise concern about the potential future issue of maintenance in relation to the gaps between the buildings. My recommendation, therefore, as I said, was about including it as a character issue. The only other comment I'd like to raise, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention that if you are seeking to move this application for refusal, you will need to include reasons for refusal for the heathland impact and the habitats element, which will be common for reasons of refusal in this area, to make sure that we consider that issue if there's any subsequent appeal of the application.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, just to say, I thought that was a very coherent explanation on both counts, and I think we should actually observe and recognise that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from anybody before we move to a vote on that? No? Okay, so the move is to refuse this application. I'll call names in turns again. Councillor Barron.
Against.
Councillor Borthwick. Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Davies. Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hilliard.
For.
Councillor Lawton.
Against.
Councillor Le Pedevin.
For.
Councillor O'Neill.
For.
Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Trent.
For.
Councillor Ricketts.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
And myself for. So could I get the numbers, please, Jill?
Thanks, Chairman. That's 10 votes for and 4 against, so that move is carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the decent amount of reasons for making your move. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Pedman. It makes it a lot easier for the officers to defend in the case of appeals, etc. So it is 12:30, members. We have one further application, and I will explain later why we only have one further application. Would you like to carry on with this one? The first one that we will be here in hospital. Okay, would you like to carry on and deal with that one?
2 things.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes for a comfort break because some people have a weak bladder. welcome back again. We'll carry on with the agenda this afternoon, which is item 6C, Herbert Hospital, 49 Allenhurst Road in Bournemouth. And I would ask Peter if you would present your case, please, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can, thank you, Peter.
That's brilliant. Organise the window. Can you see the presentation?
We can, thank you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so the application side relates to existing Herbert Hospital at 49 Elmhurst Road. The application is for demolition of 2 existing modern buildings to erect a new hospital building, which will consist of child and adolescent mental health services, CAMS and psychiatric intensive care units, PICU, comprising treatment rooms, 8 new bedrooms, ancillary accommodation, associated car park, reconfiguration of the car park, generator reconfiguration and associated works. This is a full planning permission. This application was called due to a number of objections received and general public interest. In terms of the location of the site, the application is located within the build-up area of Westbourne, and where the hospital campus benefits from a woodland setting given its proximity to the Chine. The application site is heavily constrained by listed buildings, which we have 3 listed buildings on site, and is covered by an area of tree preservation orders. On the next slide, we can see 2 buildings that are required to be demolished to allow new development, and those are 2 modern buildings, Nightingale Court and Seastone House, that will be demolished. In terms of heritage assets, as I said before, there are 3 listed buildings on site. At the front of the site, we've got detached listed lodge, which is Grade 2 listed. Then we've got another detached Grade 2 listed summer house towards the south of the main hospital building, which is again listed, is Grade 2 listed. Nightingale House is a main hospital building with chapel. There's some identified heritage harm as a result of formalising of a car park within the current application, as well as replacing 2 modern buildings with a new large building. However, heritage impacts should be weighed again public benefits to support coexistence of the new of the other facilities on site, and there will be obviously to the application will provide much needed improvements in the local mental health services. When comparing to 2018 refusal application, the current proposal moves away a new hospital building further towards the rear of the site when comparing to this 2018 refusal, where the proposal was for a building between the site frontage, the lodge, and the main hospital building. On the current application, there will be only car parking area surrounded by a soft landscaping to the east of the lodge. Apart from 3 listed buildings on site, there are further hospital buildings on site. There's a paper lodge towards the south of the hospital building, which is under the same use as currently proposed, and provides children and adolescent mental health services on site. Furthermore, there are 2 detached buildings that will be demolished. They are set towards the east of the main building, towards the rear of the site. And in terms of those 2 buildings that will be demolished, one is unoccupied since 2018, and Seastone House is used as a temporary office on site. The applicant confirmed that the layout of both buildings is not up to the current healthcare standards, and therefore wouldn't be acceptable or adoptable for the suggested use. The proposed building would compromise CAMP services as already stated. This will be there will be associated use with the existing paper lodge, which has the same stated. In terms of design, the design of the building is dictated by the medical requirements of its future uses. The replacement building will be sunk into the ground and using the topography of the site to reduce the visual impact of the proposal. The height of the replacement building will be less prominent when comparing to existing Seaston House and Nightingale Court on site. The ridge of the proposed building will be approximately 5 meters below the existing ridge heights of Seaston House and Nightingale Court building. Only the ground floor will be visible from a listed building from main hospital, and the proposed building will be of contemporary design and will be built of buff brick and zinc roof. On another slide, we can see again from different direction the building. I mean, the height of the proposed building will be less prominent when comparing to existing buildings on site. Same on the section plans. In terms of proposed floor plans, the lower ground floor will be allocated for staff areas, offices and plant room, and the ground floor level will be mainly for accommodation, and will be provided for accommodation of 8 inpatient beds, including 1 accessible, 1 extra care area, as well as other associated uses required for patient therapy. The applicant intention is to make the site carbon neutral, and solar PV panels, as shown on the proposed roof plan, are welcomed, whilst the target to meet BREEAM Excellent goes above and beyond the target standards of very good noted in policy CS2. In terms of impact on neighbouring properties, the building itself will be located approximately 37 meters northwards from the nearest residential properties, 66 meters towards the south from the nearest residential properties, and over 140 meters from a local highway, therefore away from most of public viewpoints. Furthermore, just to touch some of the objections raised, it should be noted that the site itself will be managed by and controlled by a separate act, which is outside the planning control, and this is the Mental Health Act, which required hospital managers to have a statutory responsibility for care and treatment of their patients. Also, in some circumstances and under certain sections, patient can be granted section 17, which is again something controlled by Mental Health Act, and so basically the section 17 will allow patients to leave the site, but it's the section itself is very structured and risk assessed, means allowing patients gradual integration and increased freedom. The proposals itself and the proposed building will be secured units and built with safeguarding or vulnerable occupants as a priority. Also, it should be mentioned that Dorset Police was consulted, and crime prevention design advisor acting on behalf of Dorset Police stated that fully support this application and reviewed all the provided information. Also, it should be noted that there is already similar use on sites which provide 28 inpatient beds, and the current proposal is for 8 inpatient beds. In terms of alternative sites, the officers concluded that there are no exceptional circumstances found to insist on alternative sites. There is also not a legal or local plan policy obligation in place to consider alternatives. The proposed unit will be within will work closely with existing use within the Payball Lodge. There's also identified clear public benefit in terms of the need for such facilities locally, and also in terms of local planning policy compliance. There's identified policy CS12, and officers concluded that this application would comply with this policy, which try to retain community uses. In terms of site access, the existing parking on site is informal and on garden areas, and therefore will be this proposal will provide significant improvement, especially in terms of the impact on the setting of a listed hospital at the present, which is blinded by informal and unregulated parking. There will be signs on site which will direct visitors towards the right car park instead of driving around the site. And also the proposed landscaping existing car park reconfiguration would enhance the pedestrian priority on site. There are proposed pedestrian footways alongside the vehicle routes, and they'll be separated by an e-rail. Also, the proposed materials for pedestrian and vehicle access areas would retain soft appearance, therefore would not detract from the setting of a listed building on site. Just going back to 2018 refusal, just to compare, the 2018 refusal proposes a loss of 15 protected trees when the current application resulted in a loss of 10 protected trees. However, only 5 trees will be lost due to a new building proposed, and other 5 trees has been identified as having very poor condition, and therefore won't be lost due to development. There will be 15 new trees proposed for mitigation. The council tree officer confirmed that the planting of those 15 new trees will be of suitable species and in suitable location that will mitigate their loss in time. Additionally, new soft landscaping proposed forms a high quality new scheme for this site. There will be a few visuals just to demonstrate how the new replacement building would look like. Again, contemporary design with a single stone appearance when approached from the main hospital building. Also, when viewed from a chine, it is considered that design would blend well into its setting and won't be visible from the chine itself. Also, as one of my last slides, I was trying to highlight the issue of the public benefit, and just found some latest research in terms of post-COVID mental health issues. So there is some research showing that there's a 25% worldwide increase in depression caused by COVID situation, and even another research which deals with children and young adults shows that there is a 27% anxiety and 50% depression increase within recent 2 years. Just in summary, the design of the proposed building is dictated by the medical requirements for its future uses, and existing modern buildings on site would not satisfy strict space requirements satisfying the nature of the proposed use on site. The development will be in general accordance with the development plan, would not materially harm the character or appearance of the area or the amenities of the neighbouring and proposed occupiers, as well as will be acceptable in terms of traffic safety and convenience. The public benefits identified are sufficient to outweigh the loss of the less substantial harm to the heritage assets arising from the proposal identified by the council's heritage officer. Provision of improved healthcare facilities weighed heavily in favour of the application as a public benefit in form of helping people to recover from mental health crisis faster and closer to their homes. Therefore, office's recommendation is planning approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Jill.
Thanks, Chairman. I have a statement of objection to read from Gary Wooding. Planning application number 7/2022 7797 AW, location Herbert Hospital, 49 Allenhurst Road, Bournemouth, BH4 8EW. Strong objection. Include all of the information local residents would need in order to form a view. This information has now been obtained independently, and I would like to object to this redevelopment in the strongest way for the safety of all patients on site and residents, especially children in the area. We have become aware of the type of patients that could be admitted to such a PICU unit, and this is without question unsuitable for a residential area housing many families and children. The danger posed to the local residents is huge. From the NHS document NHS England Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services Psychiatric Intensive Care Unit Service Specification, open quotes, behaviour will include serious risk of either suicide, absconding with a significant threat to safety, aggression or vulnerability due to agitation or sexual disinhibition, close quotes. As well as the absconding threat, it is unthinkable patients with these possible risks could be part of the less secure area on site and allowed to leave the site and walk around the local community unsupervised. Children wait for school buses very close to the site. The local elderly would become more vulnerable. A more suitable site should be found away from high-density residential areas. Once the risks are considered, it would seem obvious this application and any variant of it or any further building or development at this site should be declined, not only now, but at any time in the future. I oppose the original plan and subsequent amendments in the strongest sense. This should not go ahead. Many thanks for your time, Gary Wooding, Herbert Road. And the second statement of objection is submitted by Stuart and Suzanne Otter. It has also been endorsed by local residents James and Ingrid Earp, Oliver and Dorothy Merton, and Jerry and Karen Silverdale of Almhurst Road, and Krish and Trish Berry of Allendale Road. 173 public responses have been received. 90 people, 52%, object. 92 of those living within half a mile object. 30% of supporters live more than 10 miles away. 90% live more than half a mile away. The development contravenes several objectives of the BCP core strategy. I sent the following questions to BCP Savills to aid my decision. 1. What are the likely medical conditions of the adolescents in the new facility? What medical conditions are excluded? 2. It requires 60 more people to supervise an increase of 3 people. Why? 3. Recruitment of 60 staff is challenging. How will you ensure safe staffing levels given the shortfall? 4. The number of employees increases by 60. The number of parking bays reduces by 24. Where will additional staff visitors park? 5. During the 25-month demolition construction period, there will be a significant increase in lorries. What measures will be taken to ensure side roads are not used as cut-throughs? 6. Please provide a plan from January 2023 to the summer of 2025. 7. I presume that an options assessment study has been undertaken to investigate the pros and cons and cost benefit of siting the new facility in various locations in Dorset. Can you add it to the portal? I received the following responses. 1. BCP only deal with traffic highway related issues. 2. Savills provided a summary plan and they stated 1. The Trust are unable to provide further information at this stage as all publicly available information has been shared. 2. They do wish to express, however, that the facility will be operated at the highest level of clinical standards. 3. The proposed 60 full-time employees will not all be clinical staff and will work on shift patterns. 4. Subject to the determination, the Trust will be able to provide further information if appropriate. The responses are meagre, do not allay concerns, and you wonder what they are hiding. These are relevant questions which should be simple to answer as detailed design is almost complete. I visited the site multiple times. There were never more than 3 parking spaces available. The car park cannot accommodate significantly more cars with significantly fewer spaces. Google has been invaluable. NHS guidelines state 1. Referrals should be accepted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and assessments should be completed urgently. 2. Fixtures should be fitted to prevent use as weapons. 3. Inpatients will have 1. Externally directed aggression, or 2. Internally directed aggression, or 3. Increased potential for absconding with assessed concern for other risks. An estimated 40% of residents in the vicinity are considered vulnerable, over 60 or under 10. Until we receive satisfactory answers which do not contravene the core strategy, we object. And speaking in support, we have in person Dawn Dawson on behalf of the applicant, followed by Alison Broderick on behalf of Sarah Langdale. Whenever you're ready, if you'd like to come forward.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Dawn Dawson and I'm the Chief Nursing Officer at Dorset Healthcare University NHS Foundation Trust. The officer recommendation to approve is welcomed. Over the last 9 months, consultations have ensured we are proposing a best-in-class facility to support our young people. Mental health has never been more important, and by granting planning permission today, BCP Council can unlock over £70 million worth of investment into NHS mental health services locally, significantly improving the care that we can provide to our communities. The proposed CAMS PQ unit would cater for young people and children who have acute mental health difficulties and require 24-hour nursing care in a secure environment. Currently, there are no such facilities in Wessex or in Dorset, and as a result, the average Dorset patient is placed some 91 miles away from their home, which can extend their recovery time, increase the cost to the NHS, to their families, to the carers, and to the local community. NHS needs facilities to be placed in a hospital campus site alongside general adolescent unit inpatient facilities to ensure that staff trained in mental health are available and to allow for the rapid transfer of patients who are in crisis or post-interventions. As such, co-location significantly enhances patient care and results in an estimated cost saving of around £1.2 million. Throughout the application, the Trust has worked proactively with BCP officers to address the concerns raised by the public and the statutory consultees. As anticipated, the application generated a significant amount of interest, with 173 comments being received. 47% of these were in support. The Trust has held public engagement events prior to the application, and this was overwhelmingly positive, and feedback from the event was considered in the submitted design. Public objections submitted principally refer to the location within a residential area due to amenity aspects and safety concerns. I can assure you that the scheme has been designed in partnership with the Dorset Mental Health Forum to ensure sufficient security for the service users and for the public. The closest residential property is over 36 metres away, so the development will not result in adverse impacts on living conditions. Further, as confirmed by Dorset Police, the proposed development, by its nature, enhances public safety. Through engagement with officers during the planning process, the application is now in a position in which we have no objection from all statutory consultees, apart from the Conservation Office, including trees, ecology, highways and urban design, subject to conditions. In terms of conservation, extensive work has been undertaken to ensure the proposal was brought to an acceptable level of heritage impact, while still respecting NHS requirements and funding. The Trust welcomes the officer assessment that the development will result in less than substantial harm, which in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework should be balanced against the public benefit. Due to the reasons I've previously noted, the public benefits of this proposal are hugely significant, and we agree with the case officer that the harm noted will not significantly and demonstrably outweigh these benefits. The proposed building is of high quality design, using materials reflective of those in the listed building, and is lower than the buildings it will replace. Solar panels are provided and the BREEAM excellent rating achieved. The trees lost because of the application of the extensive landscaping scheme and biodiversity provided in enhancing local wildlife. As such, this proposal addresses all the concerns raised, either through amendments already proposed or by way of conditions. The Trust isn't a developer who leaves town when something's been built. We support our local communities in the long term, and our success is predicated on ensuring the best-in-class service through state-of-the-art facilities. The benefits of granting planning permission for this CAMS PQ are extensive. The proposal is located on the site of an existing hospital which complies with guidance. Where harm arises, this is outweighed by the significant public benefit. The recommendation for approval and seizing this opportunity will benefit the NHS and the local public for years to come. I therefore urge you to grant planning permission for this much needed facility without delay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Alison, you've got about 20 seconds, I'm afraid.
I think members, are you happy if I extend just by a minute or two to allow speech? Thank you.
Thank you. So this is on behalf of Sarah Langdale, Head of Children's Commissioning at BCP Council. On behalf of the Department and the Council, I wish to express our support for this proposal. With increasing levels of mental health needs within the local and national, this proposal offers a unique opportunity for the Dorset healthcare system. At present, it is necessary for children young people in need of highly specialised intensive environment to be sent many miles away. Not only is this distressing for the pressure on families who, despite best efforts, are often unable to be close to their loved ones at a time when they are most needed. This also places great pressure on us as a local authority. The development and this proposal would actively address such concerns and has the propensity to greatly improve the health and wider social educational outcomes for Dorset's young population. BCP's Children Commissioning, along with NHS Dorset, see this development as an existing hospital site as a critical element of future care pathways within our area for the children and young people in distress that require access to specialist interventions. We fully support this proposal and the development at Allenhurst Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So members, we've heard from everybody. There are no ward councillors present here today. We do have the heritage officer with us, Ruth. Ruth, would you like to make any comments, or would you just prefer to answer questions? It's entirely up to you.
It would be most helpful if I just answer questions, isn't it?
Fine. Thank you very much. In that case, members, would anyone like to kick off the conversation, please? Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Chairman. After hearing the report, I'd just like to declare a local interest that I used to employ a resident from the site, but this was over 20 years ago, and I've had no discussions with the applicant. Therefore, I feel comfortable sitting on this application. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If that can be noted, please, Jill. Thank you. So anyone wish to make any comments regarding the actual application? Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. It might be the officer, or it might be the people in the audience might be able to give a bit of reassurance, but I think it's section 77 about residential amenity and safety concerns raised. So it says the new unit will be secure. Could you just give a bit more detail about the security and what the clinicians would need to do, or the patient would need to do to escape, as it were? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. I mean, section 17 itself is kind of like risk assessment, which provides the hospital like some reassurance, like some people can actually leave the site, but they will be still with staff. It's not like, you know, people will suddenly, you know, leave the hospital and walk around the estates. Or I mean, in terms of security, there are some and obviously design features which are discussed in the reports, like, you know, it's like fences and things like that. But I mean, it's probably worth to highlight that the Dorset Police mentioned that will be security units, and obviously there is a separate legislation and separate site management plan which simply, you know, kind of like create a security unit on site. So there will be some improvements, but again, they are controlled by a separate act itself. So it's not like, you know, suddenly, you know, there will be some features like massive walls and everything will be gated. There are some security measurements, where most of those security measurements will be done under Health Management Act.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
That's what I expected.
Sorry, Paul, if you don't mind. Members, you know my thoughts on this. I wouldn't normally ask members from the audience to come up, but I think this is an important enough issue for both the people on the site and for the people in the surrounding areas that I would like to ask if the actual applicant could come forward and just explain to the members what it means when it says secure unit, please, and what the considerations are around that. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Dr. Stephen Tover. I'm a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm the current consultant at Pebble Lodge, which is the general adolescent unit currently on site, a 10-bedded unit for young people suffering from mental health problems. In answer to what a PQ is, it's probably a good analogy is to consider it a bit like an intensive care unit in physical health medicine. So it's a unit where young people that need additional care and support over and above what a unit like Pebble Lodge can provide can go for a short period of time. NHS England considers that young people should only be in a PQ for about 6 weeks. So it's to help turn around their condition and enable them to go back to a general adolescent unit. And that's why the units have to be on the same site to enable that rapid transfer. The sort of young people that are admitted to a PICU aren't those young people that are considered a forensic risk to the public. So there is a separate forensic CAMS service which has facilities throughout England. So young people that are considered a forensic risk, at risk of offending, would not be admitted either to a GAU or to a PICU. This is merely for young people that require additional care over and above what a general adolescent unit can provide. In terms of managing the risk, in terms of Section 17 leave, which is where you grant leave for a young person who's detained under the Mental Health Act to go out into the community. Section 17 leave is only granted when it's felt that that young person can manage the risk of going out, and the first time and probably the first number of times, and sometimes for a significant period, that leave would only be granted as school did. That means they'd have a member of nursing staff with them. And most PICU units, that's the sort of Section 17 leave that you'd be granting. In Pebble Lodge, we obviously try and build that up so that young people can go out with their families and also go out unescorted when they're at a point of being discharged from hospital.
Thank you very much. That is really good of you to come and speak to that, and I hope members found that useful in their upcoming deliberations. And thank you for allowing me to deviate from normal rules. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. So members, we'll come back to yourselves for any further comments and questions. Councillor Barron.
Thank you. I'd just like to touch on the residents' concerns over potential safety here. I won't go into detail of the gentleman that I used to employ because it's just obviously not appropriate to. But when he worked for me, he had a carer with him all the time. This was many years ago, and I always felt entirely comfortable with him. So it's just really the history of the site, and yeah, are the concerns valid? And you know, have the police being consulted? So it's just that really. Thank you.
It does state consulted, and they're quite happy with the provisions that are provided by the applicants. Just in your comments to the history of the site, I was actually going to ask Ruth, what are your thoughts on the buildings that are going to be demolished are not particularly of any fantastic quality or historic issue, and I think you're more concerned about the setting against grade 2 listed buildings there. How harmful do you think that is, and would you can we get over that? Is it going to be, I don't want to lose the opportunity to have this provision because of we are concerned that it may detract from the viewing of the listed buildings. I mean, are those listed buildings viewable from outside of the site, or do you actually have to go into the site to see them?
Oh, lots of things to answer. Bear with me if I don't remember them all. Yeah, no objection to the modern buildings being demolished. In terms of looking into the site, you see the listed lodge building quite clearly, but you have to get into the site to see the smaller summer house and the main hospital building. You don't get much of a view from that from the road. I mean, it's probably helpful if I just give a bit of a quick overview on my thoughts. I think at the end of the day, whatever you do with this site in terms of trying to add a new unit is going to be harmful to heritage. There are so many constraints. It's the setting of the 3 listed buildings have already been compromised. We've got a lot of new development on the site, and obviously it's in a hospital use. There's a lot of cars and coming and going. But with this application, we're at a much better starting point than the previous one, which would have built on the only bit of open space left. With this application, I accept that the applicant has really sought to work with us to minimise harm, you know, and instead of just building on that last bit of open space, they're now taking away 2 buildings and putting one in its place of lower height. Car parking, it's been noted that there is a benefit. It's a modest benefit because you're getting the parked cars away from the main listed building and putting them up out of the way, but it does mean formalising car parking across the site, whereas at the moment it's quite ad hoc, although that does have a negative impact. So there's a modest benefit from getting the cars away from the hospital building, but there is there is overall a negative in terms of more development within the setting and putting a car park on that last bit of open space. I admit there's already people informally parking up there, but this would, you know, increase the cars there. In terms of the level of harm, I've assessed it as towards the upper end of less than substantial harm, and I acknowledge there's a clear public benefit here, so it's really in the hands of case officer, well, yourselves now, to look at the planning balance here and that public benefit against harm.
Thank you for your honesty in that, Ruth. I know it's always a very difficult one when you have to make those balances between the good and the bad and the in-between. So thank you for that, much appreciated. Councillor Lepedevin, please.
Yeah, following on from that, I mean, it's a very simple question, probably far too simplistic, but comparing what's proposed with what is there now, is it substantially more harmful to the heritage than what is there now? I said it was probably too simplistic.
Thanks for inviting me. Well, yeah, yeah, I have to do that in my job. Look at the existing situation and the proposed situation, and what would I prefer? Well, I would prefer to keep the existing situation, leave that sort of informal bit of green space, and yes, there is, and there is harm. As I say, it comes down to whether you feel that the benefit outweighs that harm. So I've assessed it as the upper level of less than substantial harm. Yeah, I hope that helps answer it. If you need clarification, no.
If I may, Ruth, I think what Councillor Pedowin was really trying to say is it less harmful to have one building there than it is to have the 2 that are existing at the moment?
Yeah, I suppose I'm looking at the whole thing with the car parking and everything. There is more bulk, although, you know, I appreciate the applicants sought to minimise harm, you know, with that lower height and so on. But it is a great big footprint. It's a big facility. So yes, it is. I would say, in terms of the setting of the main listed hospital building, it would be more harm, that there is some harm as a result of the new unit.
Ruth, can I ask you a really basic question? What is the harm?
What is the harm? So I mean, you've got to, I suppose you've got to go back to basics. I mean, you've got to look at why this facility was built there. It's built by the sea. It was built in these lovely grounds. It was, you know, for people's health and well-being. It's sited in this lovely green chine setting, and that's part of its setting, the trees and everything. So I've said the setting of the hospital's been compromised over the years, one modern building after another. And I would say that, you know, the harm is just further encroaching on that sort of greenery, that setting, an increased physical presence of more buildings around the listed building. I think, does that help answer?
No, not really.
No?
No, it does.
Oh.
It does, sorry. It's
Sorry,
always
can
very
I come in
difficult.
again?
Yeah,
I mean,
please
is
do,
it-
Mary.
Is it physical harm or is it just visual harm?
That's the very good question.
Yeah, they're kind of related, aren't they? Yeah, I mean it'll have a physical presence. I mean it's difficult because in that you're taking away sorry, I can't really look at you and speak. Yeah, you're taking two sort of bigger buildings and bringing that down to one larger building. So it's a bigger footprint. So it's kind of a slightly different presence as such. I think, yeah, I mean, the existing buildings are, I would say, negative elements in the setting of the listed hospital, if that helps. And this, by virtue of the scale of it makes things slightly worse. And where I've come to my overall conclusion about the level of harm, I am also taking into account, you know, the changes with the car parking and so on, rather than just focusing on the new unit.
Thank you, Ruth. I really didn't ask you to come here to be interrogated, and I'm really grateful for your input on this. It's a very touchy subject for a lot of people, so thank you so much for that. It's really been helpful. I mean, members, you might want to look at paragraph 32 of the report. It does give a clear outline there as to where Ruth is coming from with this, and I'm grateful for her including that in the report. It makes life a lot easier. I think this application is very, very much an on balance application that we need to weigh up whether the harm to the heritage is outweighed by the benefits that will be provided to our residents. It's going to be a centre that's going to be much closer to the families, and I think we've all seen ourselves in our own communities how mental health has impacted the youngsters over the last few years, particularly with COVID, etc. And I think we do need to be mindful of that, and we need to be able to make sure that we're giving them the very best start in life that they deserve to get, and as locally and as, you know, evenly based as possible for them. I think because the hospital's there already, whoever built that hospital obviously thought that area had a benefit, and I don't see that benefit is minimising because we've changed a few buildings on the site. It's still in a perfect setting. It's just the buildings that are on the site that is changing. We're not taking away. Had the proposal been to demolish the listed buildings, I'd have been throwing the applicants out the door, because I would never want that to happen. Those buildings are lovely that are there, and there's nothing wrong with seeing a nice new building next to an old building. I think it gives you the sense of being able to contrast them together. And you know, I will support this application. In fact, I will move that we support the officer's recommendation on this. And I thank Ruth so much for coming in today, because it's not easy to come in and plead her case knowing that there's a good possibility that she's going to be knocked back. That's really, really hard work, but I know that's your passion, is the heritage of the area. So again, all I can say is thank you to that. But I do think we need to give these children the best start in life, and by providing this facility, it's probably the only way we're going to do it. So I'd look for a seconder for that move, please. Councillor Johnson, thank you. Would you like to speak?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I think that Ruth, I think the term objection sort of does you a disservice there. I think you've done an excellent job of providing us with the weighing up of the heritage impact and things like that. I think that construction of a hospital in a building of what is now architectural merit is admirable, but the thing about hospitals is that they require frequent and constant modernisation, and I think that's something that we just have to accept and go along with. I think that we all know that the benefits of this are absolutely massive. You know, as Ruth said, the hospital was built there because it's in a lovely Chine setting, and these children and adolescents have the right their treatment in that same setting. They shouldn't be forced somewhere else, out of sight, out of mind. So, you know, I think for me, it's an absolute no-brainer to second your move, Chairman, and support this. The building may be larger overall, but it's lower and less visible to the surrounding area. I think it's actually a really clever design, and I think it's a testament to what developers can do when they really put the maximum amount of effort into it. It's CS12 compliant. They've done it remarkably well to protect as many trees as they have done. They're planting more than we're losing. I can't, you know, this is just an absolute no-brainer for me, Chairman, and I will second your move to grant.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rice, did you want to speak? Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak in support, and also to reassure some of the residents as well in terms of the safety risk, the type of patients that will receive treatment here are much more at risk of having crimes committed against them as opposed to causing any safety issue themselves. So thoroughly supportive of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. And Councillor Bull? No, that's right. Okay. Okay, members. So I think this has had a very good airing, this one, and appreciate all the comments. I will go to the move now, which has been made by myself, and I'll call each name in turn, if I may, please. Councillor Barron.
Sorry,
Alex.
So sorry, Chairman. Just to confirm that you're voting on the recommendation as set out and amended within the addendum that was published.
Yes, please, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Barron.
For.
Councillor Borthwick. Councillor Bull. For. Councillor Davies. Councillor Hall. Councillor Hilliard.
For.
Councillor Lawson. Councillor Le Pediment.
For.
Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Trent.
For.
Councillor Ricketts.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
And myself 4. So in my poor mathematics, that makes that unanimous. Thank you to the applicants, and also thank you for the residents for raising their concerns. And I wish you the best of luck with getting this sorted as soon as you can, and to continue looking after our children in the way that you do. Thank you very much. Sorry, Peter, thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you, Chair.
So, members, we'll just take a chance for the other people to leave the room, and then we will move on to the final application. And thank you very much, Ruth, for coming over and sitting through that terrible grilling that we gave you. Yeah, absolutely. So, members, there is cake available if you're really good at the end of this. Members, if we can move on then to item 6D, which is listed on the agenda, and I would ask Alex if you would like to make comments on this before we move any further ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I bring members' attention to the addendum that was published yesterday, which contains new information, and we will be seeking to provide you with a verbal update and a change to the officer's recommendation. The applicant has contacted the council to make us aware that the time period within which the prior determination needs to be determined had passed, and no extension of time was received. On the basis of the information available to us, and on the balance of probability, we believe that there is a high possibility that the applicant already has deemed consent for the works outlined in the application before you. Because they have deemed consent, there is no decision for you to make. So the rest of the officer's recommendation is that this item is withdrawn from consideration from today's committee. The applicant has highlighted that one of the difficulties in them not receiving a decision on their submission is they will not receive a decision notice. Therefore, officers will work with the applicant outside of the committee process to look into this and see what we can do to address the matter that's been raised. But for clarity, our recommendation is that this matter be withdrawn from the agenda because we do not at this time believe there is a decision for you to take. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alex. And if I can just point out to members that the only reason this application is actually with us today It's because under the constitution, it has to be because the applicants are both councillors, but will no longer be councillors after this term of council. They are both standing down, but that was the only reason that this was brought to committee today. So with your agreement, members, do you agree to have that item withdrawn, please?
Agreed.
Everyone happy? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And just from myself, I'd like to say thank you very much to all members of the planning committee for the last couple of years. It's been a pleasure working with you all. We've had some very good debates, some very heated debates, disagreeable debates, but all in all, I think we've made mostly the right decisions. So good luck with you, all those of you that are standing and standing for re-election. Good luck, and this meeting.